We've got 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
We can begin.
All right, we're going to go ahead and start our meeting. Organizational meetings first.
So we'll start with the work session, Mayor. Since we've got it's 6:01 Horizon time.
Okay.
Yep. How many you got? Yeah.
All right. So we'll get started. I'll go over the consent agenda items and the organizational meeting items, since this meeting is a little bit different. Since
We can have we're ready to start the organizational meeting. Thank you.
So as we do, we'll begin the meeting with going over the vision statement of the city. So our vision statement is that Belmont will be a vibrant, multi-generational community that incorporates small town charm and heritage with an entrepreneurial spirit. So you don't have many items on the consent agenda, but I'll go over them quickly. You have 4 sets of minutes from meetings in October and November. You had a special meeting on October 26th, a special meeting on November 1st, the regular meeting on November 1st, and then the workshop meeting on November the 15th. Those are all items or minutes that need to be approved from those meetings. And then you've got a follow-up item on an infrastructure project we've been talking about for the last year and actually prior to that, which is the North Belmont Water Booster Pump Station. This is a project that we've been working on since the approval of the Dixon Village project neighborhood earlier this year. And just as background information, we have been working to find the best location for the North Belmont Water Booster Pump Station. We have a water main on Ackney Road, and so locating the booster pump station on the campus of the NC Filtration commercial property there near the intersection of Ackney and Cason Street. It's shown by the reddish colored star on that map. We have worked out a purchase agreement with the property owner. The property appraised for $28,000. We've got a subdivision to purchase that property. It is approximately 0.12 of an acre. It's in line with the 2 residential properties on the side, but it's a little bit smaller. But the property line would basically follow that diagonal for the adjacent house down to that driveway.
Okay.
Provides us access. We can put the water booster pump station. This booster pump station will look similar to the one we did at Belmont Abbey College. So it'll be the booster pump and then a little brick enclosure with a kind of a residential looking roof to it. So it will look attractive for what it is. But what we need from the council tonight is authorization to proceed with the purchase of this property so that we can then proceed with getting the permits in place, and then we can bid this project and get it installed in time for the Dixon Village neighborhood to be approved. And as you recall, this was needed for the Dixon Village, but you've heard from some residents in the greater North Belmont community over the past several years about the need for greater water pressure. So this will not only serve Dixon Village, but will also help the greater area with additional water pressure.
Sure.
But tonight is just authorization for us to purchase the property at the appraised value of $28,000, which the property owners are agreeable to, and then to allow the attorney and manager to execute that purchase agreement.
Did I see we're going to use ARP funding for the purchase?
Yes, sir. So this is one of those eligible projects because it is a water and sewer project.
Do we need to pass a resolution saying that that's what we're going to do, or have we already done that?
So if you'll recall, and Councilman Seamster had the question about why we didn't have a price on the resolution for the North Belmont Water Booster Pump Station, it's because at that time we didn't know all the costs.
Okay.
But that resolution, I believe, included the purchase of the property, the design, the construction of it.
Yeah,
Very good.
28,000 reasonable.
So this is part of that overall project.
Okay.
So those are the items. And so any questions on that or the minutes? So that's what I have for consent agenda.
Okay.
And then I'll go over kind of the process of the organizational meeting because we only have this the meeting after the municipal elections. We only do this every 2 years. So those in the audience, bear with us if we may get something out of order because we're out of practice on organizational meetings. So the first part of the organizational meeting will be to administer the oath of office to the 3 winners of the election. So Mayor Martin and Councilman Turner and Councilman-elect Zooks will come up, and the city clerk will administer the oath of office for you at that time. And then, following the general statute requirement, you will hold a election of a council member to serve as mayor pro tem. That's outlined in your agenda packet on page 7. The mayor pro tem serves in place of the mayor if the mayor is unable to either attend a function or to govern over a meeting. Then you've got the adoption of a resolution to establish the meeting dates for city council meetings in 2022. So that resolution includes meeting dates for both your regular meetings, which typically are the first Monday of every month at 6, as well as the workshops, which are typically the third Monday of the month at 4. All those meetings will be in this room. There were some holiday conflicts, which we've adjusted those dates for, but it's all in your packet. And then the last item on the organizational meeting will be appointment of elected officials to boards and committees for 2022. And I included the 2021 committee assignments, but I'll have this up here when it's time. That's kind of a reminder. So several years ago, there were various committees of the council. The council has since changed and consolidated all those, and we handle those business items at the workshops. So we don't have the Public Works Committee, Public Safety Committee, Transportation Committee, all that. The full council handles those through the workshops. But you still need to have a delegate and an alternate to the Central Iowa Regional Council, which is previously the Central Iowa Council of Governments, a delegate and an alternate to the Gaston, Cleveland, Lincoln MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization, 2 members to the Belmont Tourism Development Authority, 1 member to the Board of Directors for Keep Belmont Beautiful, 2 members for the Main Street Advisory Board and the Downtown Belmont Development Association. And in your packet, it still has the Greater Gaston Development Corporation listed with a trustee on there. Because of the merger with the Gaston Regional Chamber to form the new Gaston Business Alliance, they've changed the organizational structure, and we no longer have that position, so we don't need a council member to serve there. The city is a member of that and is an active participant in that new Gaston Business Association organization. You just don't have to have a council representative to serve on that.
You mean Ryan was the last representative on that?
Yes, Ryan did such a good job, they didn't want anybody else from the council to do that. Yes. So we'll put that on your resume. But following the workshop meeting that you had in November, Councilman Heffron and Councilman Turner and I met with some of the board members for the Belmont Trolley organization, or Belmont Trolley Incorporated, and they requested that we have a city council member serve as kind of a liaison, in addition to Kevin Kraus, who serves as a staff liaison, but to have a council member serve on as a non-voting member of their board. So I offer this to you if there is interest amongst the council members to have somebody serve as a council member representative as a non-voting member of the Belmont Trolley Incorporated Board of Directors. So these would be the ones that you would need to appoint yourselves to when the time is appropriate.
Okay.
So that was a lot in a brief amount of time. Any questions on the organizational meeting? No. Okay, so if not, then the way we would proceed, that's all that I have for the work session. So then we would go back to the commencement of the meeting for the invocation, the pledge, the agenda. We want to recognize some folks for their service to the city, and then we'll go into the organizational meeting. And that will create the new city council, conclude all the work of the previous city council. So then we'd ask Alex to come up and get sworn in at that time with the mayor and Richard. And then we'll go through the organizational committee meeting, and then we'll ask you to very graciously abandon your seat and let Alex sit there.
What if he refuses? What if he has a?
That won't be the case.
They've already changed the name, Ron.
Yes.
Yeah. And then we'll go to the consent agenda for that. So the new council would approve the consent agenda.
Okay.
So if there's no other questions, that's all I have for the work session.
All right.
So you can now move to call the council meeting to order and go to the invocation and pledge.
All right. We're going to ask, we're going to call a meeting to order, and we're going to ask Jim Heffron to do the invocation or the Pledge of Allegiance, and Alex Zooks is going to do the invocation. Okay? We'll do the invocation first.
If you don't mind, go ahead and bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for allowing us to meet today, Lord, and thank you for allowing us to serve the people of Belmont and to do your work. Lord, we pray that you keep us vigilant and keep our eyes open and our eyes and ears open, Lord. And we thank you this day, Lord, and please, Lord, help us to keep in mind of what this season is about, Lord, and it is your Son, Jesus Christ, Lord. It's your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Jim?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And before we do anything, I want to recognize Donnie Loftus, who's here. Donnie's our rep,
Our new
state,
representative, yeah.
new representative. That's
Yes.
right, appointed.
Yes.
So that's good.
I'll move to set the agenda.
Got a motion to set the agenda, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Let's go ahead and proceed. Want to do the,
Recognition and acknowledgements now.
all right. I'm going to give some recognition to the folks that have served on some of these committees for us. Following individuals are being recognized tonight for having served our community faithfully as a member of one of our boards and committees, and are being honored by the city of Belmont for their time, service, and many contributions to the city. They have faithfully served their fellow citizens and have enjoyed this public service. They have earned and justly deserved this recognition for their many years of service on our boards and committees. We especially appreciate their efforts made to improve our community while in the service of the city of Belmont. We, the Belmont City Council, hereby extend our best wishes to each of you in appreciation for your service. I'm going to hand these out of here. Caroline Shepard. How you doing, Caroline? Good. Thanks for your service. And this is for you. Is this?
That's for her and this one.
That's for her. Okay, good. And your certificate. Good. All right.
Thank you.
Caroline, will you stay up here?
You want to take a photo?
That way we can look
All
at
right.
you the whole
Well,
time.
he's going to take a picture.
Y'all
Okay.
posted some.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, good.
Everywhere.
Got it? All right.
And Jamie, Mayor, maybe we should announce like what board they were on. So Caroline was a member of the Main Street Board.
It's on after their name on your sheet. Here, if you look at your sheet here, it has their name. And then
Yeah, Caroline was downtown development. Okay, Sister Nancy Nance, Main Street Advisory Board. Sister Nancy? Who's going to be retiring in 3 weeks, huh?
Yes, I am.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good. There you go. That's for you. Okay. Good job, Emily. Yeah, you bet. Next, we have Leanna London for service with the Recreation Parks Advisory Board. Is she here? I don't see her. Okay, I'll put that right there. All right. Next, we have Emily Wilson. Can't make it either. Okay. All right. Brianna Hager, Parks and Rec Citizen Advisor. She won't be here either. Okay. I'll just throw these on. Allison Cottingham. I know she's here. There you go, Allison. We knew you wouldn't let us down, right? Allison serves on the Planning and Zoning Board. You've done a great job with that, too. Thank you, Allison. Good. Good. Thank you. Well, we got to take a picture. Photo. Kodak moment. That's my phone. All right. I don't see Vernon Abernathy here either. I can see, okay. That's it. You want the list? Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to recognize Ryan.
There he is.
Yeah.
That's right. Over there.
Ryan Schrift. You've done a great job. Hey, Ollie and Lincoln. Look at this, huh? How you guys doing? Okay? Yeah.
This is our thank
Ryan's done a
you.
tremendous job serving the city of Belmont. How many years, Ron? 8. 8 years. Time flies, doesn't it?
Hey,
When
guys,
you're having
can you
fun.
Look at me and smile.
Yeah.
Look at me. Job. I love your pajamas.
Congratulations, Ron. You did a great job, buddy. All right.
And Mayor, we typically ask the council members who are departing to share any thoughts. So if it's okay, we'll ask Ryan to
Sure.
say a few words.
Ryan?
Ryan's typically very shy and he keeps his opinions to himself. So
He's not shy.
Ollie has a weekly too. That was the business I was being told. Well, good evening. Good evening. I wanted to thank the citizens of Belmont. I have appreciated the opportunity to serve in this capacity over the past 8 years. It's been mainly a very positive experience, and it's been very rewarding to be an integral part of our success, our resurgence in a post-recession economy, leadership in building a great parks program, transitioning our staff to the next generation, and I think setting the standard for Main Street success in the region and the state and arguably the nation. We've found some very creative solutions in accelerating our paving programs, improving efficiencies, writing policy that combats legislative ignorance, and turning our ABC store into an asset in rather short order.
Yeah.
These successes are a credit to our community as a whole, the many volunteers which have powered our engine and our staff. Adrian, I believe in you. I believe in your team. You guys are doing a great job. Thank you for the work that you do for all of City Council and the mayor. I appreciate your willingness to serve. It is a tough job. I wish you much success. As for me, I'm very proud of my work as a councilman. I'm proud of the work I've done and the mark that I've left here in town. I'm proud of the Main Street Board, the parks, the businesses, the events, the infrastructure. I'm proud of what our future holds. I'm proud of the past 8 years. Mostly I'm proud because I believe our success has been a part of me, not in spite of me. I challenge this council, the staff, and our citizens to make the hard decisions going forward, to continue to pave a path of prosperity so that our children have the choice to call Belmont their homes, not only today, but in the future. Thank you.
That was very professional. All right. Now it's time to administer the oath of office to Richard, myself, and Alex. We can do this up here.
Yeah, I'm gonna do Richard and Alex first. and yours as
Pardon me?
mayor. I'm gonna do Richard and Alex's first.
That's fine,
and yours
that's fine.
as mayor.
Sure, okay, yeah. Oh.
Raise your right hand. All right. I'm gonna say I, and then you repeat your name, and then you repeat after me. Okay. I.
I,
No. Your name.
Richard Turner,
Alexander Zux.
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States
that I will support and maintain constitutional laws of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith.
and the
The
Constitution and laws
of
North Carolina,
not inconsistent therewith.
with.
And I do faithfully discharge my duties as a council person, so help me God.
And I do faithfully discharge my duties as a council person, so help me God. Thank you.
Come on over and sign.
Make sure we sign the right.
Yeah, let's click on the right one. All right, Mayor, it's your turn. Okay, I'm gonna say I, and then you say your name,
All right,
and then repeat I
Charlie Martin,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and maintain the Constitution
that I will support and maintain the Constitution
and laws of the United States
and laws of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina,
and the constitutional laws of North Carolina,
not inconsistent therewith,
not inconsistent therewith,
and that I will faithfully discharge my duties as mayor, so help me God.
and that I will faithfully discharge my duties as mayor. So help me God. Okay.
All right.
Okay. You bet. Good. All right. Next item on the agenda is consent agenda.
No, we've got to elect a mayor pro tem.
That's right.
Yes.
Organization. Okay.
I'll,
Mayor Pro Tem,
I'll nominate Richard.
Second.
second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, Richard, congratulations. You're the Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you.
Good. Now, we've got an adoption of a resolution establishing meeting dates of the Belmont City Council for 2022. And we have a list of those dates down here. Does anybody have any problem with the dates that we have so far?
I move to accept, approve.
I'll second.
We've got a motion to approve.
And
Got a
Richard
second.
seconded.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. And then next thing we have is the appointment of elected officials to boards and committees for 2022. So right now we have several people serving here, and Ryan's not on the council anymore, so we'll have to take a replacement for him. But Central Line of Council of Governments Board of Delegates, I myself is listed on that, and along with Jim Heffernan.
I'm happy to give that up.
You happy to give that one? Keep it.
No, I'm happy to give it up.
Give it up.
I'll give it up.
All right. Richard, you want to serve on that one?
No, I've done that before,
Martha?
several times.
Mark? All right, Alex.
There you go.
New guy.
Yeah.
He's Alex. All right.
Seniority.
Gaston Cleveland,
So
Lincoln.
Mayor, on the Central Line Regional Council, so Councilman Zooks is our delegate. We need an alternate.
Well, I thought it was Charlie. Were you going to
make
make
the mayor's-
yeah, I'm the delegate.
You're gonna say the delegate.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I
That's
missed that.
right.
Thank
That's
you.
right.
Apologize.
Okay. All right, Gaston Cleveland, Lincoln, and Lincoln MPO. Councilman Turner is the delegate right now. Councilman Stowe's the alternate delegate.
If anyone has interest in that, I mean, I've served 8 years on that board.
Martha, you want to be the primary delegate on that?
Not unless somebody else just doesn't want to, because certainly I've been on it the same length of time as the alternate.
Jim?
I have some other boards I'm looking at, so I'm happy to defer.
Mark?
I'm happy to defer to Alex if he has an interest.
This is one I want to be on, if that's okay.
Okay, that's fine. All right.
And so, is Alex going to be the delegate or the alternate?
He's the
delegate.
delegate. Okay, he wants to serve on that one.
Okay.
And I need an alternate on that. Who's going to be the alternate?
I'll continue in that capacity just to assist.
Okay,
And basically what that means is that if you can't attend, if you just let me know, then I'll try to attend.
Okay,
okay.
perfect.
That's
Thank you,
fine.
Martha.
That's fine. All right, Belmont Tourism Authority, Development Authority, Councilman Turner, Councilman Schrift are on there now. So Ron is retiring, so we've got Councilman Turner is rep on that. Who else to serve as a council
I mean,
representative on that?
I don't mind staying on that board.
You okay on
We
that?
seem to be getting some traction.
All right, who's going to take Ron's place on this?
I mean,
I'm happy to defer to you if you'd like it.
totally
up to you.
Yeah. Well, let me ask this because I mean, I'm interested in staying on Main Street, and then I don't know. Were you interested in the trolley board, or is that something?
You know, what I would be interested in, I mean, keep Belmont beautiful. I've never done that. I might be interested in that. Now, keep in mind, Belmont Tourism Authority, we were meeting at 10:30 in the morning. They've restructured that to meet from 3:30 to 4:30 in the afternoon. So I don't know how that may impact people.
I mean, because I would be interested in Main Street and the trolley, and I don't know if I need to be on 3. So if you're interested in tourism development.
Yeah, I could do Main Street and tourism.
Okay.
Tourism? Okay, so Mark, you be the council member on that too, as well as Richard Turner, okay? All right, keep Belmont beautiful Board of Directors.
That's what Richard said he'd like to do.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind being on that. I've not done that.
Okay. And Councilman Stowe is the alternate on that? You okay with that, Martha?
I'll be, yeah, I'm usually an at-large member anyway, so I'll stay and do that.
Okay. Next is the Main Street Advisory Board. Councilman Sillinger.
I'd like to stay on that.
Want to stay on that?
As would I.
You primary member? Okay.
Well, I think we're both.
Okay.
Both full members.
Yeah.
All right, and then the Greater Gaston Development Board,
So that's the one
We don't
we
have
don't
to
need a
do that.
representative anymore on that.
but
So-
Trolley Board,
so we-
I'll do the trolley.
trolley. Jim Heffernan wants to do the trolley.
And it's not a council appointment, but I've asked to be appointed to the County Parks and Rec Board. And so Ronnie Worley is working on that because we have not had a member from our township.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons I'm not pushing to be part of this other, because I think that's going to be a substantial responsibility there.
Okay. All right.
So with those appointments, Mayor, we are finished, or you are finished with the organizational meeting. And you can now consider a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Does anybody want to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll
So-
make that motion.
Got a
Second.
motion? Second?
Yep.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion's approved. Okay. Now the regular agenda. Do we have any signed up for public comment? Jennifer Church. Jennifer, you know the rule, you got 3 minutes.
Oh, do we have our brand new timing system in effect? All right. Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. My name is Jennifer Church. My business is at 500 Park Street. And with me is Emily Russell. And Emily and I'm the chair, and Emily's the vice chair of the Belmont Main Street Advisory Board. And on behalf of Belmont Main Street Program, we wanted to publicly thank Sister Nancy Dance and Caroline Shepard for their service on the Main Street and the BBDA advisory boards. Sister Nancy and Caroline's dedication, wisdom, leadership, and love of our city has helped bring Belmont recognition as a premier Main Street. And Sister Nancy and Caroline, please know that we are grateful for your service, and we hope you will continue to share your ideas on elevating the Main Street program and our beautiful Belmont.
Thank you.
The Main Street Advisory Board and DBDA would also like to thank Councilman Ryan Schrift for his years of service and support of our Main Street program. With the leadership of Main Street staff and council, the Main Street program has grown beyond Friday night live concerts to unique art and cultural events like Moonlight on Main. Thank you, Councilman Schrift, for your support. You will be missed. I also wanted to add congratulations, Richard Turner, Mayor, and Alex. This is a wonderful new year. Great things coming. And Jim and Mark, thank you guys for you serving on our board. And thank you for being willing to do so again. So Alex, we know these other folks we look forward to getting to know you more and sharing what our organization does with you and for your future support. So thank you all.
Thank you, Emily.
Did I get everyone? That was a good change.
Emily and Jennifer, good people. All right, that concludes our public comment. Next item on the agenda is consider the approval of a project ordinance to fund the Abbey Creek Greenway.
Thank you, Mayor. I will present most of this agenda item and ask Tiffany Farrow with our senior planner to fill in some of the details on the project itself. So this is an item that came to you at your workshop in November that you asked to come to the December meeting. So just a little bit of background on the Abbey Creek Greenway. Our first Parks and Rec master plan covered the time period of 2003 to 2013 and identified the need for greenways and trails. The plan called for 6 miles of trails to be completed or built by 2013, which is when they estimated the city's population would be 15,000 people. We didn't hit that until 2020, so we were a little bit behind on our growth projections. They were a little ambitious back then. But nonetheless, the plan called for 6 miles of trails to be built. When we hit 15,000 people, we do not have 6 miles of trails yet. In 2012, the Abbey Creek Greenway was identified as a capital project and added to the CIP, and it's been on there. It's ranked various levels since 2012. And then the 2019 to 2029 Parks and Recreation Master Plan identified the desire for additional greenways and trails throughout the community, and specifically mentioned the Abbey Creek Greenway. And then the plan, and I've included a portion of that in your agenda packet, called for a timeline of projects in that decade for which this plan is underway. And it called for the Abbey Creek Greenway to be designed and bid in fiscal year 2021/2022, which is our current fiscal year, and to be constructed in the subsequent fiscal year 22-23. So we're actually on schedule with bringing this to you for consideration because it is under design now, almost finished the design. And if you approve it, it will go under construction in 22-23 fiscal year. You were not on the council at the time because you're just now on the council, but the city council approved a rezoning in 2019 for a multifamily development along Wilkinson at Park Street called the Morris at Belmont. Mm-hmm. As part of that requirement, the city council required the Morris to build a section of the Abbey Creek Greenway that is across their property, and then the city would build the rest of it. So we're getting a portion of the Greenway built at the developer's expense. And then in 2020, the city council approved a contract with ESP Associates to design the Abbey Creek Greenway on the city's portion. So there's the segments that are not on the Morris. And the idea, so the Morris had hired ESP to design the section on its property. So we had a similar scope with the same consultant so that it would be designed in the same manner and it would have a consistent look and feel throughout the entire Greenway. The entire Greenway is about a little over a mile. And the goal was to have it designed at the same time and then constructed at the same time so that it looks and feels and acts as one continuous project. And so we are still on pace for that. As a reminder, here's the corridor. This is also in your packet, but you see this runs from basically Park Street, just south of Walgreens, along Abbey Creek to East Catawba Street, across from the Riverfront Park, and would tie into the multi-use path that will be built along East Catawba Street, tying in from Wilkinson to the Belmont Recreation Center in the front yard here of this building. I show you this because the portion of the corridor that's highlighted in that thick black line is the city's segment, and the gray area is what the Morris is building. So you see we have about 60% or so of the project, and they have about 40%. So that's the corridor. You saw these pictures of what the design would yield for the Greenway. We wanted to make sure we included some placemaking opportunities, some public art on the aerial sewer, some areas for folks to kind of gather and rest, particularly near the Adams Bluff area. Okay. And then, so what you asked at the workshop was for a capital project ordinance to show how we're going to fund the project. So the total cost of the project is just over $2.1 million. That includes design and engineering, right-of-way acquisition, because we don't own all the property, so we'll have to get easements for it. Public art, contingency, overall contingency of 4%. There's a 6% construction contingency built into the construction cost so the construction cost estimate is $1.4 million. So we think that these are accurate numbers as of just this summer. The construction cost estimate is based on ESP Associates' recent experience with bidding other Greenway projects and getting similar pricing from other projects. The public art is an allowance. We could spend that much. We don't have to spend that much. It really depends on the goal of the council. Right-of-way acquisition, we think this is a high number because of the work we've done with the stakeholders and the property owners along the corridor.
Yeah.
We think that we've got good partners at Gaston College, at the North Carolina Armory, and Adams Bluff Homeowners Association. They've all been very receptive to this, and we feel like we don't have to pay them to get the easements. There are some of the smaller properties on the western end of the corridor, some of the motels that front Wilkinson, but they're all along this corridor. We have to get easements from them. We've engaged with them as well. The good news is that the portion of the project that's on their property is on the southern end of their property, which is on the south side of Abbey Creek, so it's unbuildable for their use.
Yeah.
So it's would be utilizing a portion of the property that they can't access or can't use otherwise. So Greenway would be fine there, in our opinion, in our design. So the construction cost, $1.4 million, but total project cost of $2.1 million. And we've already spent a lot of the design and engineering budget because we've been working on this since 2020. So I'm recommending that we pay for it by a combination of grants and by loaning ourselves money. We have grants totaling $505,000 so far. We've applied for some additional grants, and we'll continue to do so. And the more grant money that we use, the less city money we would have to use.
Yeah.
We're recommending that we have loan proceeds for the balance of $1.66 million, and that would be a loan from our water and sewer fund, similar to what we did for the street paving. Greenways are hard to show a property or security interest because we'll be building a greenway on somebody else's property, so it's hard to offer collateral for that. But as we discussed at the council workshop or the council meeting where we approved the loan for the paving project, we did check with our financial advisors and the local government commission staff, and it is fine to borrow money from the water and sewer fund as long as you pay it back and you charge yourselves interest. It is not an inter-fund transfer, it's a loan. We can give ourselves a competitive interest rate and competitive terms of 1% and
1%, pretty good.
Yes, in 15 years. This is money that is just sitting in basically our fund balance for the water and sewer fund, earning about 0.5% or 1% currently, and is not needed for any other capital projects, so it is available to be spent. Doing this, once the project is completed, which is estimated in 2023, our annual debt service payments would be just under $120,000. This is actually less than what I had plugged in our 5-year budget, the 5-year CIP. So I think I plugged in $175,000 for debt service payments. Mm-hmm. So even doing the full cost of the project, our annual debt service payments would be less than what is already built into our 5-year budget. I mentioned grants. Our staff has been able to acquire grants from the Carolina Thread Trail and the Gaston Community Foundation, and has applied for additional grants from the Carolina Thread Trail for right-of-way acquisition, land acquisition, which will help offset some of that cost. As I put in one of my email reports to you recently, we were able to get $1 million in state funding for capital needs for the city. I'm recommending that we spend $470,000 of that for this project because this is one of our biggest capital projects for which we don't have funding already, or we're not already working on, so for construction, and then have the balance of that go to the various other projects in order on the CIP. So that would help offset some of the city money for that. So I mentioned we're under construction. You've got you received a presentation from ESP recently at the 75% construction, and Tiffany presented an update on that at the workshop. So they've basically gone as far as they can with the design work. The next step would be to acquire right-of-way and easements. So there's some additional work on preparing all those surveys and documents for the right-of-way. We anticipate that taking about 6 months. That puts us through the winter and spring. Once we have those easements in place, then we can begin clearing out the area. This is the area here on Catawba Street that we own that has a lot of kudzu on it. So we would like to hire some goats to clean out the kudzu. One of the reasons that this is a tricky project is because it's in an environmentally sensitive area. It's a lot of floodplain and wetlands, so we can't just go out and spray a bunch of Roundup. Because that area drains directly under Catawba Street into the Catawba River. So we have to be very careful with how we manage that area. So we want to use goats because they are environmentally friendly method of clearing kudzu. So if we follow our schedule, we would bid this project in the summer of 2022. And like we do with other construction projects, we would, if you authorize us to bid it, we would bid it and we would bring back the results of that bid. So the lowest responsible bidder would come back to you to award that contract. So if you do that, then we could start construction in the fall of 2022 and stay on the same schedule and timeline as the Morris project.
Good thing about it, that'd be a tourist attraction too, because the goats.
People will come to watch the goats. They did that when we used them for the Riverfront Park project. What we're asking for tonight is just to authorize to approve the capital project ordinance, which allows us to continue work on this project. If you approve that, you're not locked into this amount of money because we don't know what the construction is going to cost. So we don't know what the right-of-way acquisition is going to cost. We won't know that until we do it. And we're not going to be locked into the construction costs, unless or until you award a contract with the general contractor for that work. So this sets up the funding framework for how to proceed with this project. And Tiffany, did I leave anything out on the details of the project?
I don't believe so. If you guys have any questions, I'll be happy to try it out. So we're not any details.
And I can answer any questions you have about the funding or the timeline for it.
Adrian, you said that this project is about a mile long. Is that it in its entirety or a portion of it?
In its entirety.
And so we are basically responsible for rough 6/10 of it?
Approximately, yes, sir.
Okay. My battery failed, but that's roughly 2,800 feet, give or take, 5,200 feet being in a mile. If my math is right, we're somewhere around $800 a foot to construct this trail, which I don't know if that's high or not. But I'll be honest with you, a $2 million price tag caught my attention on this item. That is a lot of money for us to put in the 6/10 of a mile. I mean, I'm not against it conceptually. It's just that is a large number.
Well, let me ask a question then, because I was looking at, a couple of observations. I mean, I think we've all, in various conversations, noted every time this is presented, the price goes up. I don't think it went as far up sorry, I don't want to use that. It's exponentially misused. It didn't go up to as great a degree between, I think, the 50 and 75%. There seemed to be a big jump between the 25 and 50. It seemed, looking at the cost estimates, that at least in this round, the largest increases had to do with trailheads and wayfinding, bidding and construction administration, and third-party CMT and geotech, whatever that might be. What is that? Do we have an explanation as to why those areas increased so significantly between the last design that they'd come up with at the 50% phase?
Sure. So the further that the consultant got into the surveying and wetlands, as you can tell from the cuts, it was really hard to see the conditions on the ground until you get the teams out there to do the work. So the further they got into that, the more area they discovered was actually considered to be wetland area. And so as they were reviewing the structural documents, they wanted to make sure that we knew that we had options in terms of construction administration. So what you have is the worst case scenario in terms of construction administration costs. ESP is willing and able to step that back, but we wanted to make sure that the estimate this go around, when you're considering a project ordinance, was on the most conservative side possible. And so that's why that range went to the maximum on this estimate. Again, in that chart, you will see a range offered that includes the low end or lesser scope of construction administration services, as well as the top end of what they've quoted us.
Yeah.
And geotech is related to the wetland areas as well, and making sure that when they do that boardwalk and bridge, it's installed to be able to be maintained in longevity based on the site conditions discovered during survey.
Because I know with the wetlands, that will add some expense. And the bridge, I think, was part of the increase previously, because I don't think we originally knew that we needed a bridge.
Correct.
Yeah, we didn't back when this was initially proposed,
Yeah, we didn't
how
need a
many
bridge.
years ago, because I walked that, and there was no indication at that point that we would need to have a bridge. And if I recall, and Adrian, correct me, I think at that time, we were looking at more $200 a foot. And so if you're looking at the cost increase, basically it's 4 times as much as it was when we first began, but once again, did not include a bridge, and that's a substantial chunk.
And again, and that was 10 years ago.
Was it 10? Okay.
10 years ago.
I mean, I think we all get a little nervous seeing that the costs go up, but I do think it's a good project. And we certainly, I mean, we can talk about what's too much. I think we'll talk about that more in connection with our next agenda item. But, you know, certainly if things go up by the time it's bid out, we can have a come to Jesus discussion at that time. I think it's, you know, worth continuing forward, but, you know, just keep an eye on and make sure that things don't continue to increase so much that it becomes cost prohibitive. But I like the idea. I think it's a good project, but, you know, sometimes, you know, you find the wetlands or, you know, the Native American burial site when you want to build your building, and that just adds some expenses to it. But you know, we'll just keep watching it. But I think it's a good project, so I would be in favor of moving forward with it. But
I'm just going to add, just as a historical note, if you remember when we were looking at getting a ladder truck, I had been talking with some folks at the LGC, and they brought forward that we could borrow money to do this. And, you know, I was supportive of that because we did not have the revenue that we do now. And that was a need. We needed a ladder truck. Our firemen needed a ladder truck for safety and for these buildings. But there was no appetite on council for that action at that time because they did not want to mix pots of money and start dipping into pots of money. You know, but here we have this resurfacing for a park, which, you know, has staff's approval. Whereas when we had a need for a fire truck, I mean, a real need, life or death, there was no appetite to cross-mingle funds. You know, like I said, I like this conceptually. This project started out around $700,000. I mean, it's more than doubled. I mean, we've got a lot of needs in Belmont, and we've got a lot of parks. You know, and I've heard that from a lot of people, and something for us as a council to be cognizant of is that people are aware that we've got a lot of parks. And I just don't know what the public reaction is going to be when they find out that we're basically building another park at $2.1 million when they've got potholes and they've got other things that may be more acute to them in their everyday life. I mean, that's just an alternate view.
I think part of this is we do have to educate the public, because if they realize, as many people as we have who are bikers and walkers and runners
A lot
now, that's going to be a major connector for them
Sure
to
is.
be and have a real loop. I think one of the things we discussed 10 years ago was that if you have this, you're going behind Walgreen all the way around, and then you're coming out back up through East Belmont, whichever way you want to. So you have a complete loop. And that's unusual to have in a Greenway situation until you have bigger chunks that the Carolina Thread Trails help put together. So that's an important piece. So that's part of our responsibility, I think, is to educate the public as to why we're looking at doing this.
And we've said at least the retreats that I've been to, you know, one of our main goals is to increase connectivity, and this would certainly do that. But I'll let our other colleagues weigh in.
How exactly does this connect in, like up at the Walgreens, to anything else?
One of the trailheads would be at, like, right behind Walgreen, and so you could have, there'd be some parking there, and then you make the full loop and come down through our recreation center and come back around.
So there's and it's hard to see on this slide, but there's a little parking area. Is it Brewer Street?
Yes, it is.
Well, originally, when the designer was looking at it, we considered Brewer Street. Because of the topography and everything, they actually presented an alternative for us to consider as well, which is shown on your screen at McLean. And so that allows for better vehicular access if and when the roadway improvements at Park and Wilkinson come to fruition from NCDOT. Brewer will end up being blocked. And so the current proposal is to actually utilize vehicular access via McLean, but to route the trail up and alongside the parking to where it does utilize the Brewer Street right-of-way and then continue along the creek.
That's good.
The one thing I will say too is that while we do have other trails in Belmont, this one is being designed to be accessible and paved. And so that will make it stand out from our existing Greenway networks that we have in place today.
So out of curiosity, what have we already spent on this project? Because I know, Adrian, I think you just mentioned that we have already spent some stuff on this project. Because if the ask is just to send this to bid, we still have the authority to decide, again, like I think Jim said, if it comes in too high or what we would be willing to stomach for. So I was just curious how much we've already.
I believe we've spent just under $200,000. It's in the $180,000 to $190,000 range so far on design services.
Which would be
Gone.
for naught if we decided not to proceed.
Correct.
If we've had all the discussion, I'll be glad to make the motion to approve the project funding ordinance. Is that correct? How the wording is? Okay.
Well,
I'll make the motion.
one more.
Okay, sorry.
What is how much, I'm trying to think of the way to phrase this, the water and sewer fund, what is the balance in that account, and how does, because I know we approved a loan out of that for something at the last meeting, and then we have this one. So I'm just trying to get an idea of how many of those funds are already encumbered.
So I don't have an accurate number to give you now. We're working on that. It's part of what the finance department is doing. You did authorize $1.1 million to be taken out of water and sewer to pay for the paving project, which will be repaid back under the similar plan, but a 5-year payback and not 15.
Right.
This would be an additional $2 million. So you're looking at 3.3 million total out of that. When we did the 2017 utility rate study update, we had about $10 million in our fund balance for water and sewer. And the recommendation from the consultant at the time was to spend that down on, of course, water and sewer capital projects, which we have been doing. We've probably spent about $2 million out of the fund balance for water and sewer because we've been able to cash flow out of our operating revenues for most of our capital projects. For example, we paid cash for the water treatment plant renovations last year. So we should have anywhere between $6 and $8 million in that fund balance, in that reserve in the utility fund. I don't know the exact amount, but certainly we have enough that we can cover both the loan that you approved for the paving and the loan for this without jeopardizing any need to dip into that for an emergency that we would have or if something were to go wrong in water and sewer.
Is the finance director present? Can put a finer point on that?
I don't leave, so he was in his office when I was leaving.
Okay.
You want to make your motion again?
But I certainly would not recommend doing it this way if it were marginal.
Right.
But we
Yeah.
do have a large fund balance.
But we are doing it this way because we are under audit currently.
Well, we can't go to the LGC until the audit's finished, that's correct. But also, you don't need to go to the LGC if you borrow from yourselves. And if we were to go out to the private sector to a bank to get a loan, we'd have to have a security interest. We'd have to come up with something for collateral, and we don't own this land, so we don't know what we would do, and so it would be tricky. The interest rate would be higher, and it would cost more to do it that way. And we're basically just borrowing money from ourselves and paying ourselves back.
All right. Well, we have a motion on the floor. Ruth,
I'll second.
you got a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Yeah.
Any opposed?
I'm gonna vote no.
Opposed?
Huh?
I'm a no.
Okay, one no.
2 noes.
2 no.
2 noes. Okay. All right, we got 3-2. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda.
Mayor, before we move to the next item, Representative Loftus would like to come and speak. He didn't know he needed to sign in for public comment, so thank you
sure,
for
that's
waiting
fine.
through that. If you'll grant him up to 3 minutes to let him speak.
Yeah.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, council members, Adrian and Madam Clerk. It's a pleasure to be representing this district in Belmont. I'm thankful we got a budget passed this year that the governor signed off on. Belmont did extremely well in supporting needs from this community. I
Yeah.
look forward to continuing to work with you, and your needs are my needs. I'm a Gaston County person, so if I can help in the future, please let me know. I told Alex the swearing in starts at 6, and the swearing at starts at 6:01. Hopefully that won't deter him from doing a great job. But again, I look forward to being here Saturday morning for the clod pitching and dirt shoveling to get started on the new rec building. And just wanted to tell you I'm fully supportive of Belmont and its needs, and look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Donnie.
Thank you.
Appreciate that
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you. All right. Next item on the agenda is the Belmont Rail Trail Agenda Memo.
So I'll ask Tiffany Farrow to give you an update on the rail trail. This is also a discussion that you had briefly at the workshop that you asked to have some action for this meeting.
Sure. So the Belmont Rail Trail, just a brief background. The vision for this facility originally, when it was first discussed back in 2009, 2010, was a pedestrian and bicycle connection between downtown Belmont, the Sisters of Mercy campus, Belmont Abbey College, and North Belmont. The vision was to create a 10-foot wide asphalt greenway running north and south adjacent to the Belmont Spur tracks for a total length of approximately 1.85 miles. As this project continued to evolve, we realized there was an opportunity for a phased approach in partnering with NCDOT for some identified roadway improvements that had been scored for funding, those being the Wilkinson and Main Street intersection and the I-85 interchange at exit 26, which left us with one remaining segment that was not yet accounted for in those improvements, which ran from the Main and Central intersection south to Greenway Street. So just a brief recap of the vision and the alignment. You see it on the left there running north-south, curving along the railroad track alignment, and then two visualizations on the right of what that could look like. One at the intersection of Main and Wilkinson and one track side as you are traveling along Main Street. So while this project has evolved and overcome a few hurdles during its tenure, the recent timeline that's of most importance to this discussion is that in 2019, Belmont entered into an agreement with NCDOT to utilize CMAQ funding to help with right-of-way and utility relocation for specifically Phase 1, that portion from Main and Central south to Greenway Street. When we were doing this, we realized that there were some challenges in acquiring the needed right-of-way. and that eminent domain might need to be utilized. So in order to avoid that, staff brought back in 2020 a revised route for City Council's consideration and ultimately adoption to support that would change the route to run alongside Woodrow and up north up Main Street to avoid that property where challenges existed. And so in order to do that, we updated the CTP map through the MPO and then asked NCDOT for their support and approval of that decision that was blessed by council. It took a while, but we recently heard back from NCDOT that the revised route for the Belmont Rail Trail would not be supported for the use of CMAQ funding. And that's where we are today. And so just a little bit more about CMAQ funding. This stands for Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality. And this type of funding is prioritized based on the calculated emissions savings of a particular infrastructure facility. And so NCDOT's position is that because these were specifically calculated at the time of award based off of a railside trail for the entirety of that segment, that the funding is then tied and linked to that already approved alignment, and so would need to move forward with the alignment as originally proposed. A recap of that funding commitment is a $1.52 million in federal funding, which is an 80% federal, 20% local match, the local match being $380,000 for an estimated total dollar figure for right-of-way and utilities of $1.9 million. NCDOT has shared that if we did not utilize all $1.9 million towards right-of-way and utility, there would be the possibility of rolling over any unutilized funds to assist in future construction of the segment as well. So, for the benefit of the group, the alignment options that we were talking about, both the originally approved alignment and the one along Main Street, back in 2020 when I came to you, we talked about two real areas of change. One, in the northern side, that would just impact our continued coordination with NCDOT as part of the interchange. But the one we're talking about and focusing on as part of this discussion is on the southern end of the alignment as outlined in the yellow box to the left of the screen, which is referred to as Phase 1. So what we had proposed for their consideration, again, was a realignment along the existing infrastructure along Woodrow and North Main Street, which would avoid the challenge of right-of-way acquisition at the one property. It also did skirt around the opportunity to create the experience with the boardwalk type atmosphere that you see to the right of the screen, which was part of a 2018 branding study done for the city. But we felt like that trade-off was worth it if we could get the project to move forward and still keep our CMAQ funds. That's unfortunately just not the reality that we're at today. So, when staff was looking at this, we were trying to brainstorm what options do exist that might allow this project to move forward. So, there is one other option we could look at, and that's to consider splitting what we've always called Phase 1 further into two segments to create a Phase 1A from Woodrow South to Greenway, and a Phase 1B to be constructed at a later date, not yet determined, that would run from Woodrow North to the future improvements along Main and Wilkinson to be completed by NCDOT. While that doesn't allow the entirety of the original vision of Phase 1 to be completed, it would allow us to gain some downtown connectivity and a downtown loop for connectivity now, and to really beef up that infrastructure for some new projects coming in like the Chronicle, and really tie that in from an economic development standpoint. So staff's coming before you tonight for your opinions and direction on what ultimately ends up being 4 options for our consideration on how to best move forward. Again, the CMAQ funding was authorized and agreed to in 2019. There's a 3-year window on that agreement. So if we did want to proceed, time is important here just because we would need to utilize that funds and expend funds before the end of that contract period. So option 1 is to keep the original alignment and keep the CMAQ funding. That's shown there. Option 2 is, even though we would lose our CMAQ funding, to try to focus on the southern segment that matches what we have right now, and then utilize and beef up the infrastructure we have on Woodrow and North Main to continue that path. Option 3 is to try to further phase 1 and just focus on trying to build out the southern segment of the corridor below Woodrow. And option 4 is to just cut our losses and say, we just want to kill this project.
When you say cut our losses, how much has been spent on this?
We have spent approximately $53,000 on design and engineering. NCDOT Rail has paid the majority of the design and engineering for this.
Why did NCDOT shoot the route we had planned to divert from that?
Right. So what they had stated, and then there was some supplemental supporting data as well, was that the route that utilized our existing infrastructure didn't have as much emissions savings because some of that infrastructure was already there. And so when they were looking at the emissions calculations, because the numbers weren't matching what it was when they did the initial calculations with the original alignment, they indicated the project would need to be rescored or reconsidered for CMAQ funding. So we'd have to withdraw and then submit a brand new CMAQ application to see if we could get reawarded funding. As you may know, funding and awards of funding through NCDOT right now are extremely challenging to get. And so trying to withdraw and resubmit for CMAQ funding is not an ideal situation. So if we wanted CMAQ funding, we would recommend to try to keep it. But otherwise, if we are open to withdrawing and giving it back for another community need, that's part of the decision here tonight. The other option, when we consider the revised alignment, one of the other challenges is that the existing infrastructure that we have in place is not really ADA compliant and up to current construction standards if they were to build pedestrian and bikeway improvements today. There's also challenges with widening that to meet current standards because of some of the historic walls along Main Street that are in place. Those would need to be moved back, and touching those is less than desirable by the SHPO. So that presented some challenges with the revised alignment that was originally considered back in 2020. And that is why staff is bringing before option 3 and option 4, but staff is supportive of option 3 that would further divide the vision for phase 1, allow us to do some of that work now for better downtown connectivity, and then indefinitely put the remaining phase on hold until council provides direction on whether or not to move forward with that if conditions change or vision changes.
But that's not to guarantee that any of it, I mean, that we wouldn't run into the same problem. I mean, we'd still need that property, and we'd have to acquire it by eminent domain, which I don't think a lot of us are that enthusiastic about. We still have the 3-year time limit running on the CMAQ funds as well. Is that not?
Not for option 3. So option 3 would still require us to give back our CMAQ funding. So we wouldn't be able to utilize any of that.
Mm-hmm.
It would mean that the city of Belmont, if we wanted to proceed with some portion of the rail trail, would self-fund that project, and could phase that funding and prioritize that funding as we see fit. It would also, though, mean that we would not be held under the same guidelines in terms of our ability to make an offer on the property where we currently are experiencing right-of-way challenges. Right now, the acceptance of federal dollars means that all we can offer for that land is the appraisal value. And so the landowner is not interested in the appraisal value in exchange for their property.
My understanding, the appraisal value is not that high either.
That's correct. The property is landlocked, but to your point, the value is not that high.
I, for one, am in favor of option 1, and I will tell you, I was the one that got sworn at with regard to this project. When we began it initially, however many years ago, I actually met with people who lived on Circle Drive, and I was just about sworn at. What's interesting is over the years, though, most of the same residents there have totally changed their minds about what's appropriate, partly because people didn't realize what a greenway really is. They felt like that there were going to be derelicts and people drinking and all that kind of thing along the railroad track, and talked about beer cans and beer bottles. I was part of Connect Gaston and helped with the greenway there. We had the same kind of issues, but by the time all this transpired in Gastonia, people started counting it as an amenity. My concern, of course, would be we don't want to lose the CMAQ funding, so I think we need to stay with option one. The second thing is I would personally volunteer to at least work with the Feemster family again and see if we can make any headway there. That piece of property is not saleable and not usable. We certainly would prefer not to use eminent domain, but if we ended up at some point that it made the difference in this happening or not, you're not looking at taking somebody's house, you're not looking at taking something that they could make money from. When this property was designed, I think if my husband and I looked, I think we were told, and Adrian, correct me if I'm wrong, they did this when they designed the property as far as Circle Drive, and there was just not a way to use that property even then. So I'm definitely in favor of staying with option one because we don't want to lose the funding, and we continue maybe, I would hope to work with the Feemster family.
Well, the only thing I would say about option one, I'm not in favor of using eminent domain, not for a trail. I think that sends a bad message to everybody in Belmont. If we are willing to exercise eminent domain to take a piece of land for a trail, then everybody in Belmont is at risk. I mean, this is not a highway, this is not a road. I guess you could classify this as a public need in some way. I mean, I think it's a stretch to say that. So, I mean, for me, I'm going to be a no vote on eminent domain. I think the precedent is all wrong. This is not, for me, this is not a qualifying use for eminent domain. Now, you said CMAQ funds could be redirected in our community, or would it leave Belmont and go to another community?
It's not guaranteed to stay within Belmont, so we would need to work with the MPO and NCDOT to determine if it's possible for them to stay in our community. But it's my understanding that we would need to get any additional ideas scored if we had them within our own community.
And how much more time do we have, Tiffany?
So we signed the contract in 2019. We are about 2 years in. If the council has interest, I would be willing to reach out to NCDOT. They did put funding on hold for a while during this time period because of COVID-19.
Right.
So there has been some pause on their end as well to see if there's any possibility for a contract extension if we do need more time to execute the scope of services that have been authorized. But I don't know how much time we have. I would say I would be hopeful that perhaps we can negotiate at least another year because of COVID. But that's no guarantees. I could keep you guys updated about that.
Yeah, I still am of the opinion that we need to work with the Feemsters because to me, one of the things, if you can sell this so that their donation gives them some type of plaque naming right and give them some visibility,
Legacy.
I think that that's a possibility. I'm not particularly with the eminent domain either, Richard, because I still think we've got something out there. I think it's going to take the right person talking to that family. And I don't know whether I am or not. She is the same age as my husband, so I'm going to push part of this on him to think of how the best way to maybe to approach them would be. But I don't think we want to throw out the whole thing because of not figuring that there still hopefully is a possibility to work with them.
Yeah.
Just as a legal question for our attorney, is there a precedent for taking property for a public park?
No. In Belmont?
Well, just in
Oh, I don't know.
from a legal
I
perspective.
mean, it derives from the takings clause, which I think is the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, applied to the states to the 14th Amendment. But it says, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. So it's a public use and public purpose. And that can be now we can debate the wisdom of it, but if you remember the Kelo case where they said private redevelopment in that city in Connecticut was a public purpose, which is about the broadest definition we've had of public purpose. But I would assume if that's a public purpose, that using it for a public trail or park would it would be a qualifying use. Whether we deem that something that we should do, that we should make the decision to do, I think is a whole different story. And I would agree with Richard that I would not choose to exercise that discretion, however you want to call it. But I think it would be a qualifying use. I think it would be a public purpose.
Okay.
I think so too.
Okay. Okay.
Now, I
yeah.
just,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly a fan of that approach
Yes.
either. Though I do kind of like the idea of maybe offering them some naming rights or something, to scratch my back, scratch yours kind of thing. That might be perhaps a better solution here. Because I think, realistically, in my opinion, I don't think option 2 or option 3 is really workable. I don't think it makes sense to spend all of that money on what's basically half a trail. So I think if we want to do it, it makes sense to maybe try and work with the property owner and see if there's some opportunity there. But otherwise, you're probably looking at, nice idea, but unfortunately not possible.
because I'm not 4.1. We can talk about 2.1 million, but I think wherever that line is, 4.1 million is on the other side of that line.
So CMAQ funding limits our ability to make an offer on the property in excess of what it is valued at.
That's correct.
Okay. Well, let me float this then. When we were meeting with some of the trolley folks, they were talking about building the barn and the trolley, and that they were going to reach out to the business community, to the Chronicle, because they said, we want everybody to have some skin in the game to help fund this, because there is a direct benefit to them if this comes about. Have we ever thought about reaching out to the community? I mean, if someone would buy that land and donate it to the city, then we are no longer under obligation under that clause.
Do we have a price that the family has given out for that piece of property? Or is it all kind of arbitrary right now?
It's it's arbitrary. We had it appraised and it came back at around $10,000, and it's a 2.3 acre property. And Ms. Feemster felt that it was valued at much greater than the $10,000. Now the tax value is $20,000, but the appraisal was done before the revaluation, so it may be the tax value of $20,000. So even if the appraised value doubled to the current tax value of $20,000, that is well below what she indicated. She didn't give me a number, but even if it were $100,000, we couldn't pay 5 times an appraised value for property.
No, we can't.
Is that appraised value for the whole 2 acres or just the slice that we need?
The whole 2 acres.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, when you say we can't as a municipality, or we can't because we are bound by the CMAQ
If we
regulations?
use $1 of federal funding for the project, we have to follow all the federal guidelines, and so we have to follow the federal guidelines.
I also think probably that the citizens might ask why we're paying 5 times the appraisal value, even if we weren't limited by CMAQ funds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would ask that.
But to Richard's point, if somebody else acquired it and then wanted to donate it to the city, that's another option too.
We're doing a lot of things that help a lot of people, a lot of business. And then, when we were building that parking lot on Greenway, I brought up, let's get some of these businesses who are wanting this parking to have some skin in the game, contribute. It doesn't have to be a lot, but let's have everybody at the table. That did not get any traction, but I still think philosophically, I still like that. This is going to be a huge benefit for the Chronicle, for the businesses along that route. I don't think it's beyond the realm to say, help us acquire this property so we can help you. It will ultimately benefit you.
We're going to send out Don Corleone to make those offers. I don't know. It just seems like.
But with
I
that
think
in
it's
mind,
reasonable.
Richard, I think either with your idea or mine, I think we at least need to give ourselves that opportunity to say, let's stay with option 1 and give ourselves the time to see if any of these fly. Because
That's a good idea.
yeah, that's certainly reasonable, it seems to me.
But, and just to double check with the motion for this option 1, if we push that through tonight, we're not okaying the eminent domain, correct?
No, we're not.
Okay, okay.
No, we're
because
just saying
again,
we
I
want-
agree
Okay.
with that.
Yeah, we want to stay with
sentiment that.
option one and hope that either what I
Okay.
think or Richard thinks flies.
Well, let's say, I mean,
property.
let's say, let's think about that for, because I'm with Mark. I'm not supportive of 2 or 3, and I'm definitely not supportive of 1 if it involves eminent domain and $4.1 million. So the idea is to have further discussions. You know, I'd like to set some sort of, you know, I don't want this to go on endlessly. You know, is there somewhere we can set like an outer parameter that's like, well, I mean, that would sort of like back us into a deal-making corner, but,
Sounds like we do have something of a deadline from our friends.
well, that's
at
true.
COT.
Yeah.
If we could get a ballpark that I could use in
Yeah.
discussions with NCDOT to see if there's any interest in an extension, that would be really
Yeah.
helpful. But I can try to frame it as a ballpark to leave
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
wiggle room.
Because I mean, like,
Yeah.
I'd like some sort of finite, you know, at some point it's either this is going to happen or it's not. And like, you know, we need to, I'd like to just, you know, that this just doesn't go on ad infinitum.
You mean like 16 years to get the skateboard park?
Well, something
You knew-
like that.
Yeah, you knew that was going to come up. Yep.
That's later.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. Oh, yeah, it's been later on for some time.
Because I mean,
Option 1 with the $3 million and most of that money coming in at grant level, does that pay for the relocation of the utilities? I mean, are we looking at any additional expenses? Because I know there's some issues with Duke Power on relocating their power lines.
We would have to go back and get another cost estimate. If we were able to acquire Ms. Feimster's property, I think that, as I recall, that got us out of doing the major relocation for the utility lines. So it's
without acquiring her property, we'd have
we
to
would
pay
we
all
have to
that.
stay right.
Yeah.
Because
If we acquire the property, we wouldn't have to.
we can work around those lines.
So the $3 million is with or without acquiring the property?
That would be with. If we did not acquire it, it was going to cost more, is my understanding. But I just wanted to put on the record too, these are high level cost projections that we ran by Moffitt and Nickel, who is doing the design for the rail trail in partnership with the rail division. And so he wanted to make sure that everyone was clear and we were transparent that because we are still in design, we haven't gotten right of way and we haven't put out for construction bids in this ever changing financial market,
Right.
that these costs, while as high level ballpark as we could get them for council to be able to have as a discussion item, are still not solid costs, but could be, he felt, comfortably used for comparative purposes when making decisions. And he just wanted to make sure that we were clear. It's not a flat $3 million that's based on a whole bunch of design and engineering. This cost is very variable and would be anticipated to go up or down as engineering continues for the project.
How long is this, our portion of the trail?
The portion from, it just depends on which segment you go with. The
Right.
portion,
Option A, I mean, they're the longest section that we could possibly fund ourselves or move forward with.
right, I believe that the remaining portion of like phase one was about 3/4 of a mile. That the portion NCDOT would be able to incorporate in future
about right.
projects was about a mile.
About right.
The other thing about this too, and the Gastonia part, we tried to get them to go ahead and do the trail from the city of Gastonia out to Rankin Lake, and they wouldn't jump on it. And now it's going to be probably never happening because the NCDOT would have taken what was there and improved it once they redid all that stuff at 85, and it won't happen. So if we are fortunate enough to get this happen, even if 85 is greatly in the future and something that we could do part of it and they agree, they will continue to make it work for us. So we're pushing their envelope too with regard to this. Timing wise, I'm sure now they're going to wait until they figure out 85. But if we had jumped on this a little earlier, which we couldn't, then they'll keep working it. And so we'll get a lot of benefit from them. So there's other pieces of that to think about as well.
I mean, just from a financial aspect, keep in mind, tonight we're maybe approving $5.8 $2-3 million for 1.25 mile combined trail through Belmont. That's a lot of money for trails.
I'm sorry, 5 point.
Well, when you combine the 3 or 2 from Abbey with this 3, you come up with 5 something. I mean, they're both trails.
Sure. So to be clear, staff's not asking for approval of financing for the rail trail. We're just trying to figure out which option is preferable so that we can continue to keep working on that option and then present council for more information, because we understand more work is going to be needed before we ask council to consider a funding commitment.
I like
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I understand that, but I'm just saying everybody be cognizant of the numbers we're talking about, or the potential numbers.
So it sounds like there's consensus to stay with the original vision that was was it 1 or was it
Option one.
A?
One.
And maybe ask Councilwoman Stowe to take the lead on negotiating and talking with property owner Ms. Feemster and her family
And
to see if
Richard,
there's an opportunity there.
look into what you were talking about too. I think we both need to pursue that and see what could happen.
Well, I think, yes, I mean, and I wouldn't mind, I mean, I know Ginger, but not well. I mean, I wouldn't mind speaking with her as well.
I know it pretty well.
I mean,
too.
Well, let me ask my husband first,
Sure.
okay? Because he knows her better than any of us do, all right? Because as I said, he graduated from high school with her, and that group stays together. They eat lunch and all this kind of stuff. So my hope is that if that group thinks that this is good and we can figure out something to make it seem worthwhile to her, not just money-wise, but otherwise, then maybe we've got a shot at it.
So I would suggest that you authorize Mayor Pro Tem Turner and Councilwoman Stowe to engage with the property owner for the timeline that Councilman Heffernan was asking. I would say that was probably as long as the CMAQ funding is available, so that we could have an answer. So if we know that we have an opportunity to acquire the property, then we can proceed with the CMAQ funding and bring back to you whether or not you want to continue with the project.
what was the drop dead date for CMAQ?
Sure. So I apologize. I believe we signed that agreement in July or August of 2019. Currently, the approval says that we would complete right-of-way acquisition and relocation of utilities within 3 years. So I would request that we have some sort of decision, even if I can get an extension, which certainly staff's open to working on to see how far of an extension I could coordinate with NCDOT, but that we could have a decision prior to the need for executing those services before the contract's end period. So I don't know how long we want to kind of shoot for originally, but I'm happy to reach out to NCDOT if we want to come back and set a harder deadline once we know more from them,
Okay.
or work it the other way.
Okay.
And I think you'll know from Ms. Feemster, after a few meetings, whether or not there's any change in her position. And if there's not, then it sounds like we don't proceed with the project.
Well, I mean, to Jim's point, I mean, can we not establish from what we know from the DOT? I mean, I would just like to know what our drop dead date is. Like beyond this,
Right.
it's over.
But that's
Well,
what she's saying. They can ask for an extension, so we should
Well,
see if that happens.
If you don't want
The extension's theoretical. I mean, where
The
we
extension's
stand,
theoretical.
where we stand right now.
Yeah, sure.
If we had to
So
execute, what is the drop dead date? We cannot go beyond.
summer 2022 would be when we would need to have the funds fully committed and spent.
So 3 years would be somewhere around June of that year.
Of next year.
Right.
Of next year.
Yeah.
So
So you have about 6 months to get this done.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I know Price and Jay too, so. Okay. So
Do we need a
we're
vote
just going to
or
table.
what? How does this proceed?
I would think you could do with consensus to proceed in this way. I don't know that you necessarily need a vote authorized, because you're just asking the council members to engage with the property owner. But y'all think we need a motion?
Well, color me skeptical, but I'll.
Well, with all that,
What do we favor?
how do we reach out to the
Option
the
one.
businesses? I mean, who's going to take on that task to see if they have any interest in maybe helping us acquire this property?
I thought they asked you to do that.
Yeah.
But we can work with you on that. and
Well, I
schedule-
mean, I can go talk to them, but I would feel more comfortable if someone from staff might want to come with me.
we'll figure that out.
There may be numbers or things bandied about that I may not have access to or knowledge of.
We can work that out.
Okay.
I don't mind helping it as
Okay.
well
Thank you.
if it's needed.
All right. So we're gonna make a motion for option
No,
one?
We're just,
we're just saying
just
we're gonna
direction.
work on it.
We're gonna, okay,
Okay.
very good. Okay. Next item
Thank you.
is consider the approval of the Southport Parkway as a city street.
City maintained streets.
City maintained street. Thank you, Mayor. I'll go over this discussion and ask Tiffany to fill in some of the details, since she is our senior planner working with transportation. So as we've talked about for the last several years, the Belmont Mount Holly Loop was envisioned in the 90s as a way to move traffic from the southern end of Belmont up to the interstate, and then to connect to Mount Holly, and also to have traffic from downtown Mount Holly and the northern part of Mount Holly have easier access to the interstate and to Belmont. It was envisioned by the NPO as a 4-lane divided highway, and the goal was to have it construction done in 2010. It was going to be designed to handle traffic volumes that were projected for 2030. It was part of a larger vision of mobility improvements for Eastern Gaston County, which also included a 5-lane South Point Road. Obviously, South Point Road was not widened to 5 lanes, and obviously this roadway was not constructed by 2010. It's not even scored for to be constructed anytime soon. So the larger Belmont Mount Holly Loop was submitted for scoring as a new project in spot 6.0, but it didn't score well enough to get funded. That process, as we've discussed, has been halted due to DOT's funding issues. So it's still considered as an unmet need, as is South Point Road, and that's on our unmet need list through 2050. So fortunately, you had a private developer who was willing to partner with the city and DOT and the Pulte Group to build a portion of the overall Belmont Mount Holly connector road through Belmont, through the what is now considered the Del Webb project that the council unanimously approved earlier this year, I think back in May. As part of that conditional rezoning, the Pulte Group, as the developer, agreed to build a portion of the Belmont Mount Holly connector from Armstrong Ford Road to just south of Nixon Road. And we rebranded our portion of it and called it the Southport Parkway. And so we worked through the TIA process. City staff worked with the developer, applicant, as well as NCDOT and the MPO, and Kimley Horn, who is our traffic consultant that handles TIAs for us. And so NCDOT approved the TIA. They approved the roadway cross-section for the Southport Parkway. And this is a schematic that was included in the rezoning that shows the cross-section for the Southport Parkway. It is a 4-lane divided roadway, 2 lanes north, 2 lanes south. This shows sidewalk and a bike lane and sidewalk that is since changing to multi-use paths on both sides of the street, but landscaping in the middle, and then you would have turn lanes onto adjacent streets, and then street trees to separate the vehicle areas from the pedestrian and bicycle areas, consistent with our requirements. So you approved the rezoning for the Del Webb project from the Pulte Group, and they began working on designing the Southport Parkway. Separate from that, we had some property owners in North Belmont and the Oaks Commerce Park and some of the residential areas along the Woodlawn corridor expressed interest in developing their properties earlier this year, but the alignment of the Belmont Mount Holly Loop went through their properties and they wanted it removed from their properties. So they engaged with us because they're in the city limits. We asked the MPO, what happens when someone wants to have an adopted alignment removed from their property? So the MPO worked with NCDOT on that process. And NCDOT agreed on what's called an express design, which is still a high-level design of a roadway, but it's sort of the first thing you do after you just take a marker and just draw a line on a map, which has, you don't really assume any constraints on that. You do the express design and you get a little bit more detail, but certainly not enough to design plans on. But that was to refine the alignment to see if DOT could realign the overall Belmont Mount Holly Loop Road to get it off of those properties where it was basically encumbering the property. So DOT started work on that in March of this year and got comments back to us in November of this year, so just last month. And so the comments back to the city staff on the alignment showed that they wanted the multi-use path on both sides of the roadway instead of an on-street bike lane and a sidewalk to get cyclists off of the street and onto a multi-use path. We are agreeable to that. That's consistent with our comprehensive land use plan. It's consistent with the small area plan for the South Fork area. So we passed that along to the Pulte group. They were fine with changing the approved cross-section from on-street bike lane and a sidewalk to multi-use path. What was not okay on our end was the design speed that NCDOT wanted for this overall roadway. So remember the first picture I showed you, this goes from South Point Road through Belmont on the west side all the way up to Mount Holly and then back down Highway 273. So NCDOT said that they wanted a design speed of that entire loop at 50 miles an hour and posted at least 50 miles an hour and posted at 45 miles an hour. So we took that to the Pulte group and we looked at our plans. That is inconsistent with the adopted comprehensive land use plan. It is inconsistent with the adopted small area plan that you approved for the overall, what we used to call the Pittenger property. It exceeds the maximum speed limit for city streets, which is 35 miles an hour. And so and it's not what you approved for the Del Webb rezoning.
Right.
So we had to let them know about that. Even though this was initiated by another property owner, we needed to let the Pulte group know that we had this ruling from NCDOT that's inconsistent with what we've already approved. So interestingly, NCDOT has various typical roadway sections in their design manual. They have one called 4G, which has nothing to do with cellular service. It's just the naming and the nomenclature that they use.
It's really fast.
It is super fast, and not quite as fast as the 5G, but it's close. So it's got a cross section that's very similar to what you approved for the South Fork Parkway in Belmont, and it has a posted speed of 35 miles an hour to 45 miles an hour. So we raised this to NCDOT, but they were adamant that they wanted the Belmont Mount Holly Loop and South Fork Parkway to have a posted 45 miles an hour and design speed of at least 50.
It's just too fast.
So here's just as a reminder, here's the cross section that you approved for the South Fork Parkway. This would be designed at 45 miles an hour and posted at 35 miles an hour. I'm sorry, designed at 40 miles an hour, thank you, and posted at 35 miles an hour. So the reason I'm even bringing this to you is because DOT is not going to accept anything less than what they want for their vision for this corridor, which is designed at least 50 miles an hour, posted at 45 miles an hour.
It's too fast.
And we want it designed at 40 miles an hour and posted at 35. So we're arguing about basically 10 miles an hour. And you may say, well, why are we spending all this time arguing about 10 miles an hour? Because if you'll recall from all the discussions that we had on the Del Webb project rezoning, that whole property has topography challenges. It's got environmental constraints. It slopes down to the river.
Right.
And so there's a lot of hills in it. And so we worked with the developer to design this roadway to work with the land. So we're trying to minimize the grading, minimize the clearing, and have as small a development footprint as possible for the roadway. And I am speaking a little bit out of turn because I'm by far not qualified to speak on transportation engineering and engineering in general. But the faster you want to make a roadway, basically in my speak, the straighter and the flatter the roadway has to be. If you have some curves, that's obviously that slows you down. So in order for the roadway to be built to the standard that DOT wants, it cannot be built as shown on our comprehensive land use plan. It cannot be built in our small area plan. It cannot be built in the rezoning for the Del Webb community, because they would have to have additional grading to make it flatter, and would have to have additional grading to make it straighter. And what's going to happen is, if we did that, the grades for the South Fork Parkway will not match the adjacent grades for the neighborhood pods for the overall project. And so we also required that Del Webb put in a traffic circle kind of at the intersection of the main road and the amenity area for the neighborhood, but also for the commercial center. And that's where traffic can kind of, as you're heading north, can split east or west. So a traffic circle doesn't work well on a 45-mile-an-hour 4-lane road. So there's a lot of issues with building as DOT wanted. And any more detail than that, and I'm well outside of my realm. But basically, the road cannot be built under the approved rezoning plan as DOT wants it. It cannot be built how DOT wants.
Huh.
So,
I like that.
so what has happened is, I won't speak for anybody else. I'll speak for me. I'm really frustrated that DOT threw this at us last month when they worked with us for well over a year on this rezoning, if not 2 years on this rezoning. Both the MPO and the DOT were great partners with us on this project.
Yeah.
And then, and we really were working with the Shelby office on this, and they were great to work with. Now we get back and we have this different vision for the corridor from NCDOT with a different design. And they basically said, we want it built how we want it built, because we want to move cars fast up and down the peninsula to get to the interstate for a possible interchange there, and to get up to Mount Holly. So, our goal obviously is to move people and vehicles safely also,
Right.
but to do it in a way that respects both the land and the adjacent land use. So you can imagine Del Webb building a senior community, 55 and plus.
Yeah.
They don't want cars going 50, 55 miles an hour
I don't blame them.
past there. And you rarely get complaints about people driving too slow on our streets. Most of the complaints that you get are people are driving too fast. Well, you drive how the roadway is designed. No offense, but the police department has to enforce the speed limit as posted. But when you're on Park Street is not designed for 35 miles an hour. It's designed that you drive 45 or faster. And so if you're in your car, you're going to go how it feels comfortable.
Yeah.
So if we design a road to drive 55 or drive 50 miles an hour and post it at 35, we're going to have speeding issues. It's going to be an enforcement nightmare. So we want to design this road on the front end to fit the land use that it's going to be supporting. As you'll recall from that rezoning, there were not houses fronting on the South Fork Parkway. The South Fork Parkway was basically a collector road, and all the streets going into the neighborhoods form off of the South Fork Parkway. So it's not going to be like South Point Road, where you have a lot of driveways and a lot of folks with businesses and houses with direct access to it. So we are at a point now where the developer has engineered this site plan. They're waiting for us to approve the roadway project so that they can get started on construction of the roadway. DOT has thrown this obstacle at us, saying that it has to be redesigned according to their plans, or they're not going to accept it. We've been operating under the premise that this would be a state road because it's part of this Belmont Mount Holly connector.
Darn.
So DOT and the MPO are telling us now that if we want this built according to the adopted plans that we have, the small area plan, the comprehensive land use plan, and the rezoning plan, it's got to be a city street. So the developer would build it, but then just like any other neighborhood street would be offered to us for ownership and maintenance. Yes,
Do we
sir.
have any clout as far as the development for Del Webb, as far as putting that part in the city right there with the speed limit? And then after that,
well,
We
so
are
that's
doing that.
that's what we're talking about
Yeah, I
now,
know.
is to make it a city street so that
But 50 miles an hour is too fast.
Well, that's what all of our adopted plans say.
Do we have what's Wilkinson?
50.
50? Okay. Well, although,
Is that what you said? Park Street is designed for 50?
Because it was 45.
Yeah,
I don't know
well-
how it was designed, but it was typically you design it 10 miles an hour faster than you post it.
Okay.
And the state required that we went down to 35, they said because of the school there. But that's, if you look at the whole scheme of things there, that really does not make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's
It
basically
was
a
very-
racetrack.
Yeah,
it was very hard when they changed it.
Yes.
Because
Dangerous.
I was, so used to going based on, going 45, let's just say that.
yeah,
Changing driver behavior is difficult.
6:30 in the morning, I get passed most of the time by
Yes.
people.
Yes.
Yeah.
If I'm
So-
trying to do it. But, okay, this came to pass because of the people at the Oak Park wanting to do something. So now they're changing their tune. In other words, to my way of thinking, we do what we said we're doing and say, you need to figure yourselves out and either have Kathy Harrington, our new Representative Loftus, go to bat for us and tell them that they are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they're not. I mean, this is not acceptable behavior for an entity at the state level.
I agree.
Okay, it's just not.
Well, riddle me this.
Yes.
How this is not the first time this has happened, because and you all are, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it happened with the Morris too, that the TIA called for
Yeah, it was
an
turn
additional
lanes or something.
turn lane, and then all of a sudden DOT said, oh no, it can only, it's not going to be a 50-foot, it's got to be 100 feet, and there's not enough room for 100 feet, so there's not going to be one at all.
Yes.
And so, how is this, what's the disconnect here? Because, this is frustrating because, they were involved, right? And, it's not like they can say, well, we knew where you wanted to start it and where you wanted to stop it, but we had no idea what was going to happen in between and how you they knew. Is that?
Yes, that is correct.
And let me ask this, because this has been in our comprehensive land use plan. I know it was in the one that we amended in 2017, 2018.
Yep.
Is this consistent with the vision that was in the one that was before that, the one that was enacted in 2000?
Do you remember?
It is consistent with the 2007 comprehensive land use plan visions.
And was DOT, were they consulted, were they involved in the amendment to the comprehensive land use plan in 2018? So would they have seen this in our comprehensive land use plan as well?
Yes, because we included the MPO and the DOT on that to make sure that our plans were consistent with the long-range transportation plan and the CTP.
Yeah, it's
All right.
it's a safety issue.
But how does this keep happening?
I don't have an answer for that. We do include NCDOT on the front end of all these projects. Any project that fronts a state road, we route to DOT for their review, we route to the MPO for their review, and we take their comments. If it requires a TIA, we meet with Killiehorn, the developer, NCDOT, and the city during the scoping meetings. We look at it. We involve NCDOT on the review of the TIA. Both the state and the city have to agree on the TIA before we bring it to the planning board and to the council for that. So this should not have been new information to them.
Well, I'm of the opinion that we have our state people let them know this because this does not make the DOT look professional in any way, shape, or form. I would be embarrassed to even say I'm a part of it if I were
Safety,
in this mix.
safety issue.
Well,
Well, I don't really believe it's a safety issue, Charlie. We had a 45 mile per hour road through the heart of Belmont, the Belmont bypass, Keener. For 24 years I lived here, and then one day it changed. I don't know what the negative impact was of that road. They're saying all of a sudden we realize there's a school here that's been there for decades, so we need to change the road speed. But when I looked at this road, I always saw the cross section. I looked at this is a 45 mile per hour road. This is Hudson Boulevard. This is Hoffman. This is the Cary Parkway. We've got one shot here for a parallel road on this peninsula, and it is this road. And if everything falls into place, there's a high probability that we will get an exit on I-85. If we get that exit, this road will carry that South Carolina traffic to I-85 and get it off our interior streets, which is going to reduce a lot of pressure for our citizens trying to get to school and get to work, because that's a lot of traffic that we could then move. You know, I supported this road for a decade because for me, this was the most pragmatic solution to our need. Catawba Crossings, which was then the Parkway, was wishful thinking because of the cost and the legal challenges and the opposition. But this was virgin land that we could put a road through, so this was doable. I mean, this road is a people mover. This road has to carry people at speed to get to 85. I mean, if you're worried about, you know, how these people who live there are going to interact with this road, you got South Point Road posted at 45 at certain segments, which the people of Belmead and Greystone have to contend with. The same thing with Hoffman and Hudson. Huge developments offshoot that road. Somehow those people get to work every day. You know, we're talking about 10 miles per hour here. And, you know, we can't go back. We're not going to get a redo on this. And it's my understanding from talking with Randy today, because I talked to her for a while, so give me a clear picture of what's going on. From the email, I saw that Shea Holmes is interested in parcels 2 and 3. And according to what she says, they do not have a problem with the design standards of the DOT to have that road built to carry at 45 miles per hour. If that's the case, you have 2/3 out of 3 that are willing to meet that performance standard. And you can't have those 2 sections at a certain performance standard linking into another one. The DOT is not going to allow that. So, I mean, theoretically, you've got 2 who support the design standard that the DOT and MPO want, and 1 that does not. I mean, I understand you want to look at this as a city road, and it's, you know, conceptually, yeah, I like that idea. But this road is designed to move people. The peninsula is not going to do anything but grow and expand. And this is our opportunity to move people from point A to point B. And beyond that, if we take this on as a city street, we are then responsible for paving that road. This road's approximately 3 miles, if I looked at the map correctly. So you have a multiplying factor of 4. We're going to take in 12 miles of road that we will be responsible for paving. And if you looked at the trends right now with the Powell funding, they have been trending down for 6 or 7 years. Now, COVID gave it a precipitous spike down. But before that, the trend was steady, and it's due to mass transit, it's due to electric vehicles and flex fuels, and that trend is going to continue. I mean, it's mandated by 2030, I think, these cars are all electric. So nobody's going to be pumping any gas, so there's no money coming in through the Powell bill. Our representatives have no gap funding. There's nothing in place to take up the gap that's been created because we're not using this gas. I mean, there are a lot of variables here, but the people of Belmont, you know, don't like this traffic. We are choking to death on traffic. This is a relief valve. This relief valve has to move at a certain speed. We have got to entice people to use this road. You put it at 35 miles an hour, you make this a winding road. At 35 miles an hour, it's not going to connect to 85. So
Did you go to the Del Webb in South Carolina?
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah. I mean, and they were off a highway. I mean, we went off a highway, I think, to get into the main road that led to their entrance. But
Yeah, because they've got like a giant thing
I mean,
around
they were not.
the outside, and there was the highway.
Is there proposed maintenance costs? I know it's a crystal ball exercise for the future of what potential repaving would cost for this, because this is a huge undertaking. And again, this would be something that would have to probably take a loan, and depending what the
But I'm assuming that the developers would originally pave the road.
So
service maintenance down the road.
Well, the maintenance, yes, but
So what I'm going to ask is that you accept this as a city street, that when it's time, after it's built to all of our standards, that you accept it just like you would the neighborhood streets that will be built on this project. We don't know what it's going to cost to resurface it, because it will be built to a standard that should not need to be resurfaced, Jerry, for probably 20 years. So we will be collecting Powell bill revenue. We will be collecting taxes. We will be collecting revenue from this project. for 20 years before we'll need to do a full resurfacing on it. We will do, obviously, routine maintenance for potholes. And the beauty of it being a city street is that when there's a pothole on it, you say, Adrian, there's a pothole, and I get Bill to have his crew go out there and fix it. Whereas now, if there's a pothole on, there's been potholes on South Main Street for years that we've been trying to get DOT to do. We have to go through them. And you all get blamed for it because it's in Belmont. Nobody knows it's a state road. And telling people to call DOT is not a satisfactory answer for anybody. So yes, there's higher maintenance costs for it, and the PAL bill funding, will take time to build up. But the bigger, and I agree with everything that Mayor Pro Tem Turner just said, for the need for this roadway, which is why I'm bringing it back to you, because part of the frustration that we're experiencing as staff, and well, I'll say as me, because I don't want to speak for everybody else who has to work with NCDOT, is that one of the reasons DOT said they wanted to have this roadway fast is so more people will drive on it. The faster you make it, the more it will entice traffic to get off of South Point Road onto this road. The more people that take this road, the better the chances this road scores for funding. And it can be funded to be constructed in the 2040s or 2050s, because it's all the committed funding to 2050 is taken. So DOT has told us, and their consultants have told us, the faster we make this road, the more people will drive on it. The more people will drive on it, the better it will score. The better it will score, the better the chance of it getting funded. And we'll build it for you in a couple decades. Mm-hmm. So that's if we want it to be a state road. If we want it to be a city street, or not if we accept it as a city street, it gets built next year. And we'll be driving on it probably in 2 years, because the Pulte Group committed to you that they would build, in phase 1, they would build this roadway from Armstrong Ford Road down to Nixon Road so that we get that mobility connection. Then, and as Mayor Pro Tem Turner mentioned, there is a potential development coming in on the southern end of what we used to call the Pittenger properties that would be building the exact same roadway. So we can get this built privately without taxpayer money by the end of this decade, and likely sooner, assuming you approve developments. And it's a conceptual plan, so it's going to be a while before it even gets to you. Who knows if it gets approved? But we can get this road built by taking the leadership on it this decade, or we can have DOT do it, in 20 or 30 years from now. And the reason it's that choice is not just have the Del Webb Group build the state road how the state wants it built, because that compromises their entire project and it kills their project. So then that property goes back for sale. Yeah. And then you work with another developer who may not want to do a senior housing community, and it may have a lot more density on it than what you're comfortable with. So if you want this road, unfortunately, the state has put us in the position that it needs to be a city street. Or we can have it as a state road, and we roll the dice and hope the MPO can get it scored well enough so that DOT will build it for us in the 2040s or 2050s.
Well, is there not another option, is that we tell the builders, because my understanding is that the people interested in 2 or 3 don't have any issue with the performance standard of 45 miles per hour. Can we not tell the developers, yes, you can build here, but you have to meet the NCDOT performance standard across this property?
Sure. And
Okay.
they
That would have been
choose-
nice to know before we
Yes,
approved.
and had DOT told us that 2 years ago, we would have done it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Pulte Group could have said, and I'm sorry, I'm getting frustrated at the situation, not at you all. Had DOT told us that 2 years ago, we would have told the Pulte Group, you can't build you have to build what DOT wants you to build, and they would have made a decision.
Yeah.
This works for
Based
us,
on
this
that.
doesn't work for us, and so we're going to build here, or we're going to look for something else. So, and I don't know enough, apparently as much as Randy does, about the subsequent project. I haven't had any conversations about what design speed they want, but frankly, it doesn't matter what they want if the first part doesn't get built. So if the Pulte Group walks from this project that you all have approved, that land just sits there and there's no roadway being built until DOT builds it, or until you find another developer who wants to build this project. And then you know how long that takes from the time they come into our door till the time it gets to you, till the time it gets entitled and then built.
Let me ask this, though, Richard made this point, and and maybe this is a Tiffany question, or maybe it's a question for somebody that's not here right now. Is there a way, if we were to say, hey, Shay or whoever on these lower 2/3 is fine with the 45, 50 miles. We've got topo concerns, grading concerns in the top third in Del Webb, and so that needs to be 35. Is there a way for calming or somehow to take it down from 45 to 35 when it gets to Del Webb, so that we can get the 50, off of South Point Road, and then just somehow, I don't know how, I'm not an engineer, but is that feasible where we could go with a 35 in Del Webb and then still make the Shay or whoever go 50 on their property?
Sure. So just to clarify, I personally haven't seen anything in writing from the development interest on Belmont number 2 and 3 in terms of a commitment for design speed. I'm not saying that verbally it hasn't been shared, but I haven't personally been a part of those conversations. So I'm not sure what that team has evaluated. No sketch plan has been submitted, so therefore no environmental, to my knowledge, has been done on that site to determine the level of topographic challenges and or opportunities that may exist on that segment. But I will share that before staff came before you with this topic today, in part of those meetings, we did ask NCDOT if there was some willingness to consider a differentiation of design speed where it makes sense in different areas and around different land uses along the Belmont Mount Holly Loop in its entirety. And based on where they are right now and the response that was received, it was that one speed limit and one design speed needed to be consistently applied throughout the project for the scoring. So I'm not sure, while I agree it might make sense to do a funneled approach as we're not, going near that traffic circle, I'm not sure that would receive the support from NCDOT to do it that way.
Well, guess what? It's going to be 35 anyway, because there's supposed to be a school site as far as that property, so it'll be 35 at the end. So I don't know which piece of it's going to have that, but 45 is not going to ever work.
Depending where they locate the school.
That's what I'm saying. It's the same way as on Keener Boulevard. If you locate a school on that road, it's got to be 35. That's what we were told. That's why they did that. Okay, and that school is not on Keener. Okay, it's off. So when you're doing that, then it's going to have to be 35 anyway. I still think that we need to go to our state people and say, you guys need to work on this and get this straightened out, because this is not our problem. This is their problem that they've created.
The only thing I would say to that, Martha, conceptually that's good, but the scoring process was created so that we would not be involved with our representatives, all municipalities,
but Richard, trying to
tug on them to get something done. So, they may want to get involved, they may not. We may want to try it, but this is extremely important to this community. This is a one and done. We get it wrong, it's wrong.
But Richard, this is not a scoring issue. In other words, we want the road built. If we're going to wait till 20, 40, or 50 and hope we get it scored, that'd be great. Then we just don't do development.
I don't think it's one or the other. We can tell the builders they have to build according to the DOT design standard.
We did, and they are. And the DOT's changed their ideas, not us, not them.
Well, depending on who you talk to, I talked to them, they seem to think that we threw a wrench in at the last minute.
How would we have done that?
Wait a minute, excuse me, you talked to who?
Some people at the MPO. And they said that this curve came up late in the game. Now, I don't know how accurate
what was changed late in the game? That would be my question to them. What was changed late in the game?
My understanding was the design of the road, and I guess that pertains to what the Oaks have brought up.
Well, that's a separate
issue.
Okay. Well, what I think I would put out there, again, this is something that we're going to do once. We're all talking about people and what they said and what we think and what should happen. We've got three parties here. We've got the city of Belmont, we've got the MPO, and we've got the DOT. There's some differences of opinion here. Why don't we get everybody in the same room? We're always talking about bringing the shareholders together. Why don't we get in the same room and flesh this thing out before we move forward? Because again, you got one shot at this.
Well,
we did it right.
Well,
we did it right.
Wouldn't that? I would assume we'd want to include Pulte
Yeah.
in
we're gonna do
that
that.
conversation as well.
Doing something like that might even be valuable, even if it doesn't end up changing anything, just finding out why this is
Yeah, why
now
they
the
can't-
second time
Yeah.
this has
Mhm.
happened.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good exercise for at least two reasons.
Is there any reason why that can't be done?
So I would agree that getting the MPO, the DOT, and the city together to talk would be helpful at your level, because clearly at our level, it's not working.
Mhm.
We are following our adopted plans and the adopted rezoning.
And what DOT said.
And what
to
DOT
us.
said.
Mhm.
DOT has changed its
Right,
mind
you're
and
right.
is now blaming us for it, it sounds like.
You get traffic.
What I would say, so we definitely need to do that, big picture wise, whether it affects anything on here. We need to have better coordination between the MPO, the DOT, and the city of Belmont. My understanding from the reason why this is timely is because the Pulte Group has been working since you approved the rezoning on its engineering plans. It plans to close on the property first part of 2022. I'm not sure exactly the date, but over the winter in the near term. And as soon as it closes, it wants to start construction. So it is trying its best to build you this road. If we want to wait until we can figure out when to meet with DOT and the MPO and the Pulte Group, that's going to slow all that down. And I don't know how long it's going to slow it down, but I certainly don't want to do anything that affects their closing on the property and jeopardizes their project. And it may be that the DOT says, you're going to do it how we want it. The Pulte Group says, fine, that doesn't work for us. And then they walk away from the table.
Yep.
And then we're no farther along than we were when we started this conversation several years ago. And if you look at the big map that I showed you on the first slide, this roadway alignment that DOT is wanting is terribly compromised throughout. It goes through existing neighborhoods. It goes through a business park.
Which was a catalyst that got all this ball rolling that
Yes,
ended up
exactly.
affecting us.
So if DOT wants us to wait and let them score this project overall, the right-of-way costs are going to be disrupting a lot of things on the northern end, which is not really our issue. Our issue is how do we get it done on our end. And so I certainly welcome having more conversation. I think the more you talk to people, the better. But this is a timely matter, and you don't have to accept it as a city street tonight because it hasn't been built, so it's not offered for ownership yet. But we need direction on which way to proceed, and proceeding with it being built according to our comprehensive land use plan, our small area plan, and our rezoning plan, and how the developer wants to do it, gets it started. And it could be that we're able to talk to our friends in Raleigh who could maybe change some minds within the department to get them to accept that this corridor is 20 miles as presented. It goes through a variety of land uses from rural to small town urban to industrial to out in the countryside. It doesn't need to look and function the exact same the entire time. You got to match up the transportation and the land use. I mean, that's just basic stuff. So this project's not even doing that. So I would like to think that we could talk to somebody at the state level to allow this to have a little bit different design where it's sensitive to the context in which that roadway is working.
And the environment.
And the environment, yes. And so, if to do that, we need to know from you which way we want to go. Do we just want to listen to do what DOT says and jeopardize this project and jeopardize this road? Or do we say we want it built how we approved it with DOT input on the front end?
Donnie's already gone at him.
Yes, well, we can certainly talk to them Saturday.
So that's what I want. It's for us to talk to them.
That's what I would do.
Let me ask Parks a question. Since the road as designed and as approved is consistent with the comprehensive land use plan, and it was approved, and there is no issue from DOT at the time, I mean, are there any legal ramifications if we were to require the DOT design to move forward? I mean, could they say, look, you approved it, it's consistent with your plan?
Okay, The answer is, I don't know.
That's the best answer is it depends.
But let me just say this, probably more pertinent to our small area plan, which is important,
Yes.
is how we phrase the approval of the conditional zone. And I think, as I reviewed that, we tried to build in flexibility by saying compliance with city and or state DOT.
Yeah.
So you've sort of got an and or type
Yeah.
issue going, and I would think we would want, if you were moving, I don't want to be ambiguous, but if you're moving toward a city street, you'd want it to be or. And if you're moving for state, state these, you'd want it and, it would be together. But, so that doesn't tell you anything, except by building in the flexibility, you probably didn't have specificity.
Yeah.
Okay.
On that issue.
Very frustrating.
So, it might, this conversation with stakeholders might be productive, it might not, but you said it was time sensitive, so I guess you need to tell me. I mean, Councilman Turner's correct, this is one time shot at an important issue, and you, in one sense, you don't want to rush it, but by the other side,
I mean, I don't know. I think as long as I've been involved in any sort of city matter, whether it's a planning and zoning board or city council, people have complained, why aren't you do something about this? Why don't you do something about this? And it's a state-owned road, whether it's fixing potholes or whatever. And I know we've talked about stepping up sometimes and doing things because we don't want to wait for DOT. And it seems like here's a situation where we can step up and say, we don't want to wait for whatever DOT's going to do. That if we listen to them and do all this stuff, then maybe it'll get funded, and by 2050, we can have this road built in a couple of years.
Yes, we can.
And have it all paid for by developers without taxpayer funds.
Yes.
Now, you asked a good question, Alex, that, it's hard to know what maintenance costs are going to be. Certainly, I don't think it'll be terribly expensive to fill potholes and stuff. And again, we can, let's call Bill Carroll and get it fixed instead of saying, well, get on the DOT website and fill out a form and maybe they'll be around, or God forbid a sinkhole, or we've had some of those. But, we can get it fixed right away. And we can get this built and up and running. I understand. I mean, I think, because I think all of us would say that the goal of this is to alleviate, the goal of the South Fork Parkway is to alleviate traffic on South Point Road. And so if MPO is saying, well, 50 miles an hour would do that better than 35 or 40, I think, yes, that merits discussion. That's a point in favor of building a higher speed. But if we don't get this done at all, it's not helping anyone.
Not helping anybody at all.
Jim, throw in, I think, what I want people to think that if we go with the performance standard of 45 miles per hour, it is married to the STIP. That's the only way it can be done. That's not true. You just have to get the people who are developing the property to accept that standard. And then they're still, under our ordinance or our desires, they still are required to build that road.
But that's
the 10 mile per hour variance. So it's not one or the other. And and this is what I want to find out. We can talk to Randy and MPO about it. It looks like there's some interest in 2 and 3 who are willing to comply with that standard. So you have 2 out of 3 willing to comply to that performance standard.
How would she know, though? Wouldn't we know?
Because they're
We've not heard
meeting.
anything.
Apparently they're meeting with them. They're in talks
Well,
with.
this isn't, we have something here, and that's a maybe. So I think we're gonna,
Then let's meet with them and conjecture out and get down to
this-
facts.
Well, I'm just saying
who we
is-
need to be meeting with, not the developers who may or may not happen. I mean, we've got, it's like Jim said, we have an
Big project.
opportunity to get this done
Big
and not
project.
wait till 20, 40, or 50. And so if we don't do that, that's where we're losing ground.
But that's on the assumption that it's married to the STIP, and you can't get a developer to comply with the new performance standards. Every time you say that, that's misleading people.
But it's misleading people to think that's gonna happen anytime soon if we're trying to get the approval of, with all the stuff that we've seen with MPO. Richard, we've not
No,
gotten
you-
anything
If,
in our area
no,
from
okay,
them.
I think what we're missing here is that if we get the developers to fund this road, you don't go through the MPO. It's
Right,
not
but this-
involved in the
Right,
score.
this
right,
developer
right.
would
But
need right to walk. I mean,
But yeah, I mean, that's
Yeah.
the problem, is that if we say, if we go through with that and Del Webb says, can't do it,
Can't do it.
can't do it, goodbye. Now we don't have our road.
It's a safety issue.
And we're back to square one and on top of that, we might end up with someone who buys that property that, we all talked about when we went through this, and we spent a lot of time and effort on it, all the benefits of the Del Webb vis-a-vis some other project. What's to say that the person who comes along next, if Pulte walks away, says, we want all single-family homes, and hey, let's do 3.0 dwelling units per acre, and hey, kids welcome. We've got great schools here in Belmont. They can all go to South Point in the new middle school. And what's to say that the folks we end up with, and who knows when that will be, because the first thing we talked about when I got elected in 2019, and we sat down to talk about onboarding was, hey, there's this company, this group that wants to build senior assisted or senior age restricted housing on what was called the Pittenger property. So that was November of 2019, and it took all the way up until May of 2021 to get the approval, and we're still going. So if we go back to square one, if they say we cannot build this
You'll pull the plug.
at, we'll just have to walk away. When are we going to get, let alone whether it's Shea Homes or whoever, there's been no sketch plan submitted. There's been no,
That's correct.
and so
You're right.
we're right back where we started from, and that portion of the property, I would dare say, it would take a lot longer, and two, I bet you we would not be as happy with whoever came along next as we are with the Del Webb.
Well, the other thing, and I apologize for interjecting, the one thing that we have heard from the development community as they build infrastructure for us too, just to keep in mind as part of the discussion, is the more costly the infrastructure, the more density they need to be able to financially support the investment in the infrastructure. And so with those design speeds, with those higher design speeds, it would be helpful to move traffic if that really was possible, and if it was in completion with a lot of the other projects that were envisioned for that connectivity by the time this project was supposed to be built out originally, right? The Catawba Crossings was supposed to happen and already be on the ground. South Point Road was supposed to already be 5 lanes.
Yeah.
So the traffic that was originally projected to funnel up this corridor, while we have traffic, isn't able to currently benefit from some of the infrastructure that was part of the original visioning, and even potentially part of the original visioning in terms of a projected design speed for this roadway if there was one early on, right? So it is a complicated project, but what I'll say is that is something that we hear in our department when you're talking about development, building the infrastructure. They don't mind partnering with the city to do it, but there is a cost-benefit ratio that they're always balancing out in terms of what is that roadway going to cost, and then I've got to make it up somewhere, whether that's in density, whether that's in a reduction of open space, whether that's a reduction of parking or some other.
And we saw that with the Smith property and the various permutations that took over multiple months,
Yeah.
because that's exactly what they were saying. Is that, if you want us to realign Bellwood Drive, we got to make it up somewhere. This isn't a charity. And so, I would, it's the same thing.
Well, I want to build this road to serve the community. I don't want to build this road to serve the needs of one development along the route. If if we go ahead and take this in as a road for Del Webb, then it's going to be a 35 mile per hour through the other two parcels. Chances are. You have that performance standard. I think the ramp to 85 is probably going to be off the table if you have a 35 mile per hour road. I think that's one of the requirements is it's going to have to be a boulevard or some type of road that leads up to that ramp. I'm not 100% sure, but again, that's a question I need to get answered. I mean, there's a lot riding on this. You know, I understand what you're saying, Jim, you know, what if and what not, but you know, again, keep in mind, I mean, for me, this road has always been about relief for the peninsula, relief for the future growth. I mean, you're not going to widen South Point Road. I mean, if we think we're going to widen South Point Road, it's nuts. The cost, the topographical issues, even if you get the right of way because of the way the road slopes down, the costs are going to be enormous. You might get some turn lanes. This is the road. I
But
mean,
Richard,
Make it 35 through the Del Webb and then
Well,
extend.
Charlie, if we take this road on, let me just throw this out, and I said everything I need to say. Maintenance cost. Okay, so the road performs for 20 years. 20 years from now, there's going to be 5 or 6 people sitting at this table trying to figure out how do we pay to pave 12 miles of road at current cost with whatever the interest rate is at that time. I mean, that's a big unknown, and they may look back at us and say, what were we thinking? This could have been a state road. We would not have this problem of this maintenance and trying to find financing to pave this road, this thoroughfare. The city street's 2 lanes. This is a thoroughfare. This is as close as you can get to a highway without it being a highway.
Talking about years ago, years from now, though. No.
but the other thing is, if the ramp would be the issue or the exit, then it makes even less sense that DOT did not say at the time we were looking at Del Webb, you can't do this way. So it's not, there's somebody there who is not looking at this picture properly, if what you're saying is correct about the exit piece of
The
it.
ramp has always been, you know, on the wish list going back to Joe Carpenter. He's the one that originally brought this up and tried to get traction on it. It's my understanding the DOT is on hold right now at looking or moving forward with the express design to even consider incorporating that exit ramp in the widening of I-85. So they're waiting to hear from us what we're going to do before they make a decision on that ramp. And I'm going to bet you anything, if we go with 35 miles an hour, the decision's going to be there's probably not going to be a ramp. I mean, I don't know that. I wouldn't put my hand to a Bible.
Yeah.
That's speculation.
I don't, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm just,
I want to answer that.
oh, no, you go ahead. Mine was more general.
Okay. So on the specific issue of another interchange on 85, that is not included on the scope of the widening of 85 project. So that will not be included no matter what. It would be a new project to add a new exit that could be part of the Belmont Mount Holly loop if that's what so chooses. And as you've mentioned several times, it has to be a mile between the interchanges. So there's a very small window of where that could even fit.
Yeah.
So we don't know that's another speculative thing with this. And if we're willing to gamble losing the Del Webb project because we want a roadway built faster than what Del Webb is willing to build it so that it performs faster, then that's a huge risk. And I'm afraid we're gonna snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory on this thing. This was a big success that you had this year, was getting the South Fork Parkway approved and having a private developer build it and build it in accordance with your adopted vision. Now DOT is telling us to change your vision to match their vision, which they should have told us on the front end.
Right.
Mhm.
If DOT
Absolutely
wants
right.
that, then DOT is going to have to build this roadway because the Pulte Group's not going to do it. And so then we just wait for another developer that may not be nearly what you want, and they may be willing to build this road, but then who knows when that's going to be. And it could be 20 years from now, the council's having the same decision of, man, it would be nice to have a road through this property.
And you get that kind of speed limit going through a development like that, it's too fast.
Yeah. Guess who's
just
going to
too
be
fast.
calling you complaining about speed? The residents of that road. And you can say, well, this wasn't designed for you. You live on it, but it wasn't designed for you.
So I would just say, first of all, I we aren't, if we indicate our intention to accept this as a city street, I want it to be clear that we're not doing it for Del Webb. We're doing it to be consistent with the vision that's been in our comprehensive land use plan for years now, long before Del Webb ever, or whoever it was that buys these properties came along. I'd also, yes, I mean, the faster the higher the speeds are, it seems like that is, from what I've seen, the more cars that will go on the road. So the faster the speed limit, yes. But if the speed limit is 35 to 40 miles an hour, that's not to say there will not be any relief. I mean, cars are still going to go on that road. So, I mean, not as many cars as perhaps with 50 miles an hour, but it will still serve the purpose. I sort of agree with, we've got a good thing right now. And there's a risk that maybe we want to hold out for a great thing. But by doing so, we might end up with nothing. And I'd rather hold on to that good thing, especially considering the way this all went down. These are all legitimate concerns, but why weren't they raised at the front end before this was approved, consistent with the vision that's been in the comprehensive land use plan for at least 10 years?
I agree with that.
And so I just think that if we meddle with this, if we mess with this, I think it's good the way it is. And I think we could end up with something a lot less palatable on that property should Del Webb and Pulte say, we can't do it this way. We're done. Thanks, guys, for everything. We're done. And we will not like what ultimately replaces them as much as we like the aspects of this project. And I was even staying with my aunt and uncle in Clayton over Thanksgiving, and they were talking about, you're getting a Del Webb in Belmont. Oh, that's such a boon for the community. They add so much to the community and everything. And I just don't want to mess with that. I think we're going to get a road. It's going to serve our purpose. It would be nice if it were a 50-mile-an-hour road. It would be nice if they had told us that before, but I don't want to jeopardize this, and I think we can still get what we want and accept this as a city road and step up. And this, here at last is a situation where we step up and say, DOT, thanks, but no thanks. We're going to take care of this, and we're going to be more responsive. And yes, there will be some costs. When it comes to repaving, yes. But if we think about that now, we can plan for that and factor that in. But I think we need to go forward and step up and take ownership of this as a city street.
I agree.
This might be a technical question, but do you have an idea of what the difference in the capacity of a road at 35 versus 45 is? Because I was just thinking, on a 3-mile stretch, I'm thinking that a 10-mile-an-hour difference in the speed limit isn't going to make a huge difference in the amount of time it takes.
It hasn't on Keener Boulevard, even though I don't like 35, it has not made a huge difference in the amount of traffic that moves. There's not backups that I've seen, because of the 35 versus 45. It's just a matter of you have to keep your brake on more.
Right.
It's a 55 and over community.
So Del Webb is, I guess, aware of this.
They are aware, and
what is their position? Have they said, well, if you do this, we're out?
sure.
Yes.
So they've said the maximum design speed that they can accommodate as part of their project was 40 miles an hour. So they were willing to change their design, even this late in the game, to accommodate NCDOT's request for multi-use path as opposed to sidewalk and bike lane, which did require some re-engineering on their part, and they were willing to work with us and make that commitment and redesign their project to incorporate that. But they did look at that. They evaluated. One of the main things that it impacted was the radius of the curvature of the roadway, and it was significant. So it went up double, if not more, as they went to look at that design speed, which impacted where the roadways would connect, where they would align, and the pockets of development that were approved as part of the schematic plan. So they, like I said, they were willing to do some changes They were not putting their foot down to say, well, it was not approved that way on the schematic plan. You know, we're ready to move forward. They're trying to be flexible, but at the same time, they're ready to move forward. What's on hold currently is they're trying to get driveway permit applications from NCDOT. NCDOT can't review those roadway plans for the driveway permit because they're not sure what standards the roadway is going to be designed to. And so all of that is on hold. They're trying to get everything in line so that they can hit the go button as soon as they can. And that's why we're coming before you for some direction. And they want to make sure somebody's willing to accept the road. If NCDOT isn't, is the city willing to?
It's a safety issue. Period.
I mean, I don't know if I agree with that, but,
It is.
you know, Dale Webb is one developer. Now, while it is optimum compared to other possible developments, it is one development along 1,300 acres and a 3-mile road that will have other developments on it.
Let's make a motion.
This road, again, you know, we got one shot at this.
Will they come up at all? So 30, they're saying 35. The
So-
MPO saying, what, 45? Will they come up to 40? I think you had mentioned something.
Yes. So they actually have come up. When they first submitted the construction plans for the roadway, it was at 25 miles an hour. And staff said, whoa, that's not consistent with our plans. And we showed them that plan and they said, understood, let's look at the topography, let's look at the site, let's see what we can do. The team went back and said, we can come up to posted speed of 35 miles an hour. And we said, well, could you get the design speed to 45 miles an hour? And they said, well, let's try. So we asked them to try. They came back and they said there's some tight points on that site.
Yeah.
The maximum design speed that they could have throughout their project to make everything work was 40 miles an hour, but that would still allow them to accommodate a posted speed of 35.
Yeah.
All right, well, I mean, I think we've exhausted the conversation, so I mean, I'd call the question.
All right, I move that we accept the South Fork Parkway as a city street.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. Motion carries.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda. This should be an easy one here.
I'll give
Consider
Tiffany
the
a break if I
authorization
do
to
this
seek
one.
design services for pedestrian improvements at the intersection of Keener Boulevard and East Catawba Street.
Thank you. So one of your top priorities in this year's budget was making pedestrian improvements to the intersection of East Catawba Street and Keener Boulevard / Park Street. This has been something that the Main Street Board has requested, something that the council has requested, something that our residents along the Catawba Street corridor have requested. And we've been working with DOT on this for a while. DOT has now allowed us to proceed at the city's expense to make pedestrian improvements, specifically a crosswalk across Catawba Street from east to west on the south side of the road, basically from Watson Insurance across the street. That would require an extension of the sidewalk on Catawba Street, going on the southwest corner of that intersection, bringing it down so that you could have a crosswalk that receives an ADA compliant ramp on both sides. That we also have room for a crosswalk across Catawba Street from the Park Street Methodist Church to the Watson Insurance. So we were able to get crosswalks on half of this intersection. The reason we can't do the entire intersection is because of the width of the roadway on the north side. It requires a pedestrian refuge island, and there's no sidewalk on the entirety of the northwest corner of this. So that will be a separate project if we want to go after that. So in order to get something done, and most people walk on the south side of the street there because you have sidewalks on both sides, they end up at the Watson Insurance side to cross over, so that will be the safest place. Our city engineer, Jerry Hatton, has designed the diagram on the right. We will use that. We have to then get a pre-qualified NCDOT approved signal design engineer to do the pedestrian push button signals. So it has the little clock that counts down
Right.
how long you've got to run across the intersection until the light changes, and to coordinate with the existing signal timing system. So as with everything with DOT, it's more complicated than it seems. We can't just stripe a crosswalk. Nonetheless, we have 2 proposals that we're reviewing, and we think for $12,000 we can get this design and engineering done. And then so we're asking you to authorize us to spend up to $12,000 on the qualified engineering firm to do this signal design work so that we can get this implemented this fiscal year. I'll answer any questions you may have.
All right,
What do you need a proposal?
Jim coming back.
Funding?
No, just authorize us. There's money included, and actually, we did not think it would be this inexpensive. So there's well more than this in this year's budget for this project.
But
So
we
we just
actually
need to authorization, just
Need to vote for
authorize
funding?
us to proceed with the project and spend up to $12,000 on design services.
I'll make a motion, we approve the project with funding up to $12,000.
I'll second.
Got a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
motion carries. Very good, thank you. Next item on the agenda? No.
Richard, second.
No.
Mark made the
You
motion.
opposed?
Richard, second.
No, I seconded.
Okay.
Oh, seconded. I thought. All right.
But the tie goes to the senior member. Sorry, Alex.
No, that's a.
Consider the approval of an amendment number 1 to the Belmont Skateboard Park Capital Project Ordinance.
Thank you, Mayor. As we've discussed throughout the year, we have, there was potential for state funding for the skateboard project. We did not want to include that in the overall project budget because we didn't know what was going to happen with the state budget. Representative the late Representative Dana Baumgartner put $150,000 in the state budget to go toward the Belmont Skateboard Park, but we haven't had an adopted state budget in in I guess 5 years. So we didn't know where that was going to end up. The good news is that the state actually acted like a grown-up and passed a budget, and the governor signed it, and then that money made it through the process. So that money is secure. We don't have it yet, but the state will work through this process of getting us the money. So we have $150,000 in state funding for the skateboard park, and I appreciate Councilwoman Stowe and Councilman Seelinger working with Representative Baumgartner on that.
Yeah.
So because you approved a capital project ordinance to fund the skateboard park at your June meeting, we need to amend that capital project ordinance to account for this additional revenue. And so the proposal before you is to amend the capital project ordinance to add to increase the funding up from $265,000, which is the approved budget for the project, to add $150,000 to that to make it a $415,000 project. And you see that on page 76 of your agenda packet, just adding another line item of state grant revenues going from $0 to $150, keeping the city's contribution at the approved $265,000, adding the $150,000 of state revenue to have a total project budget of $415,000. So all of this has been hopeful, but not real until the state approved the budget, until the governor signed the budget. So we didn't know what to do. So we haven't done a full public engagement for the skateboard park additions like we did for the skateboard park design. But we did ask Spawn Ranch, who is our contractor for the skateboard park, for if we're able to add $150,000 to the project, based on the feedback that you already received from our community over the earlier part of this year, what would you think should be added? And they came back to us with something called a skate path. And Zip, I'll defer to you on any details because I don't skateboard, don't know anything about this. But
Zip does?
Well, Zip's been working with the contractor. What Zip doesn't know, he's learned. And so what Spawn Ranch has proposed to us, this is not on our site, but this would be similar to what they would build. It's a skate path, and it's a separate component to the skate park. It could fit in the same footprint as our area that we have available, but this would be really more of a beginner's area to learn how to do the various maneuvers without having to try it out there in the skateboard park itself with potentially with more advanced skaters. So this would be geared, it wouldn't be off limits unless we wanted to, but it would be geared for beginners and younger skateboarders to learn how to skateboard better and to advance their skills so they feel comfortable going into the skateboard park. So my recommendation is that you amend the capital project ordinance with Amendment 1 on page 76 and 77 to account for the $150,000 in state revenue and to apply it towards the skate path.
I'll make a motion, we approve that amendment.
Got a motion to approve?
Second.
A second, okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed?
We're gonna lose $150,000?
No, I would say that we take the 150,000 and we add it to the budget of 265,000, or we subtract it from the budget of 265,000, and we save $150,000.
Gentlemen, that is not ethical. I want to make sure you realize that.
What's
When
not?
I went to Representative Bumgarner, I explained to him what we had in our budget. I said we would like to have a Class A type skateboard park. And he said, what is that going to cost? I said, at least another $150,000. Waynesville had, in 2014, they spent $500,000, and they had what was considered a good park. So if you're going to do this, then we cannot apply for grants, because you cannot ask something and then you play around with what you're going to do with it. This is not what we asked for.
Was the amount not just dedicated just to the skate park in general?
No.
Here's your amount?
No, it was to add to it. Our budget had been set, and he said he actually was surprised. He said, how much money do you want? I said, we really need $150,000. He was kind of thinking 50. I said, well, if we really want it to be what it should. And Mark went to bat for that too, because he, had dealt with Representative Bumgarner himself. And so I really appreciate his support, but this is not what he got the money for us to do. So this is very concerning to me from a professional standpoint and ethics. This is not acceptable.
I mean, the conversation I had with him was that, the event that we get a budget, which back in January looked kind of like a toss-up, was that we could use it, because it sounded like, my understanding of the way these things are built is they're somewhat modular. So the event that we had extra money that came in, we could add some features and hopefully make it more useful to people, hopefully attract more usage to the park, open it up to additional skill sets, interests, whatever. I'm not a skateboarder. I'll defer to, a resident expert in the room. Zip. Yeah, but
I'll go back to what Richard said. We have one shot at this. We're not going to get another $150,000 to improve it. So if we don't do this right this time, and we had somebody to support us, then, as I said, I'm the one who started this. So you're talking about ethics. That's something big, important to me. So whether you think the 150 is good or not good, I will not be able to ask for grants or anything from this point on if this is the way we're going to deal with it. I mean, and I've done a number of things over the years for the city and pitched for money, but I've always done what I said I was going to do. So if this council is not going to support that, you will not see me asking for grants.
My understanding, though, was when we vetted it, when we talked about it, did you not say, Adrian, that if we get the 150,000, it will be up to the council to decide whether we want to subtract that from the current budget or add it on to the current budget? I understood that it was to be a choice.
Yes, sir. And so the choice would be to add it to the budget or to basically to supplant city money for the new state money if it got into, because once we knew that the money was in the House budget, we had the conversation, do we go ahead and increase the budget for this project and to increase the scope of it? And I cautioned to wait until, number one, until there's resolution on the budget, and two, to decide whether or not to add this to the scope of the project and the budget, or to basically take $150,000 of city money out of the existing budget and that you could then authorize for something else, and to put in the $150,000 of the state money for that, and so that you end up with the adopted plan for the skate park. That was the decision that the council needed to make.
Well, if that's the case,
That's
as
free
I
money.
said, I've made my position clear. I will not apply or ask for any grants in any situation from this point on because I cannot feel the responsibility that I feel now that I did the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And I did the correct thing. So that's fine.
Yeah.
Well, let me
That's
ask
all
you
I need
this,
to say.
because I thought the money was directed, and I'm talking to you too, 'cause I guess you spoke to Dana, to the overall project. That was my understanding of it. But what you're telling me is like this money is to take this specifically from an A to an A plus.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's why I
that's
asked
right.
for it.
Right.
So
Yeah, I mean,
I don't mind sticking my neck out, but if I'm not going to get the support of the council, as I said, I won't do this again. Okay, so I'm not talking about just for skateboard parks. It's just a matter of if I tell you I'm going to do something and ask for it, and I'm going to make sure it's done appropriately, I can't feel comfortable doing that. So, and it's not that I'm
Yeah.
mad; it's that I'm disappointed as much as anything because I've worked on this for 15
Long
years.
time.
And
Long
so
time.
I want it to be top notch. And so if we have that opportunity and don't take it, then it very much concerns me because this is for the kids. This is not, this is not something that I want. It's something for our young people.
Parks, let me ask you something. I mean, is this an ethical breach?
But I don't think that's
It's on my part.
in my purview.
I
As
mean,
a decision, have my conscience.
Okay.
it's because of my.
Well, my understanding was more in line with what Jim said because I had the same recollection of that conversation. Whichever
you'll-
meeting that was.
If you'll recall, I had words just about with Adrian over the situation when we were looking at the budget and how that was going to work. So it's something I feel strongly about, obviously, and the city did not do what it should have years ago, and I'm wanting to make sure we did it properly. And we're not, if this is the way you want to do, but I mean, I can't
Well,
vote but one time.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this. I mean, I don't mind the skateboard park. One thing that concerns me, we're spending, $415,000. You're getting close to $500,000 in some respects for a skateboard park, which is very much a niche community. That being said, ethics are important to me as well.
Mhm.
While I think the dollar amount is very high, I mean, I would be willing to, and I believe we can do this under Robert's rules. We can entertain a motion.
As long as
to
it's somebody who voted in the majority.
You can maintain a motion to reconsider from the vote of the majority before the meeting.
So someone from the majority would have
One
to,
of the three of you would have to move to reconsider and it has to pass.
well, and I'll tell you, I mean, I'm torn on this issue, but with the passing of Dana Baumgartner and him doing this for us, and there being some questions about whether this is an ethical breach or not, I will make that motion to reconsider.
Okay.
I'll second. Can I second? I'll second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye.
And now you have,
Opposed? No.
now you have the motion.
Got a majority.
Oh, okay.
You approve the reconsideration motion now.
I know it's a vote on the main
Motion to move.
I'll make a motion, we approve the amendment.
Okay.
I will second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Very good. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But I agree with Richard.
All right. Next item is on the committee reports.
Thank you, Mayor. The next section are the draft minutes from your various advisory boards. You've got the draft minutes from the November 4th Board of Adjustment meeting, the November 9th Environmental Sustainability Board meeting, the October 13th and November 10th meetings of the Historic Preservation Advisory Board, and the October 21st and November 18th meetings of the Planning and Zoning Board. So those are just for your review so that you know what your boards are discussing and what may be coming to you in future city council meetings. No action is needed on those.
Okay.
And then for the manager's report, a couple items. As we've alluded to earlier, we have a groundbreaking ceremony this Saturday morning at 9 a.m. for the Recreation Center. I don't know if you noticed when you came in because the sun may have already gone down.
God,
The fencing was
said
installed
fence
today. So that will have signage on it. So that'll be wrapped this week. So that is our construction fencing. So the long-awaited Belmont Recreation Center is underway. We'll officially break ground on it Saturday at 9. All are welcome for that. We'll just
9
park out
o'clock?
here.
Yeah.
9
9
a.m.
o'clock, okay.
And then I wanted to ask, I can't remember if we've already discussed this or not, but do you want to have a workshop meeting in December?
No.
No.
Okay. Thank you. That's good feedback. Thank
That
you.
was quick.
I'm going to be in Pennsylvania, so.
Yeah. We'll just do it in January
Okay,
sometime.
all right.
Or we could incorporate it into our retreat.
Oh, yes, yeah, it works out. So we do have the outstanding issue of interviewing the applicant for the Historic Preservation Board and appointing those members to that board, but that can wait till January. Then we mentioned a couple times earlier about the state budget. So just, I know we've done this privately, but publicly, I want to thank Senator Harrington for her work on this and for all of our delegation for voting for the budget.
Yeah.
Belmont received $150,000 for the skateboard park from Representative Bumgarner. Senator Harrington put in $500,000 for Tech Works that will come through us as a pass-through to Tech Works to help with that project. $1 million for capital projects for the city.
Yeah.
And $1.5 million in addition for the recreation center. So Senator Harrington really went to bat for us, and all of our delegation was very supportive of that. So it helps to have good relationships with our delegation.
Yes, it does.
And also not just the money, but these horrible policy provisions that the House was looking at that we've talked about with the land use stuff that we've discussed ad nauseum this year did not make it into the budget. So I was at a League of Municipalities meeting last week, and they were talking about the fact that cities got so mobilized and reached out to their delegations about these policy provisions, and that certainly helped. So we're not always going to agree with the delegation, but we need to always respect them and keep good relationships with them and work with them where we can and just advocate for our issues where we may disagree. So thank you for all your work with the delegation. And then also wanted to follow up from, I believe it was the last council meeting. You had a public comment about environmental contamination in the Woodlawn Industrial Park in the Woodlawn corridor. You asked us to look into that. We did. We talked with the North Carolina Brownfield staff about it and NCDEQ. We did the research on the actual Brownfield agreement and the prior contamination or the contamination from prior uses of both the Woodlawn site and the adjacent sites. The concerns expressed are not founded by the documentation on the Brownfield website in terms of the amount of contaminants that may be leaving the site from dust and mud from a rainfall event. The most dangerous environmental contamination was down and lower in elevation and lower in water flow from the site, so it could not have traveled up onto the site. So those concerns about, I think there was a Superfund site next door, that those contaminations are not coming up onto the Woodlawn site and then getting into our storm drains. So we continue to work with NCDEQ, NCDOT, all of our state partners on enforcing the regulations that we can enforce and advising them on the ones that when we're aware of something that we don't have the authority to regulate, we let them know about it, so they have looked into this. So just want to let you all know that we did follow up on that. Clearly there's environmental contamination on that site, but the whole point of the Brownfield program is that it's cleaned up to an extent that the property can be repurposed. It doesn't mean it's going to be 100% clean, but it means that it's clean enough that it can be reused, which is the whole point of that program. Otherwise, you just have vacant sites all over the state because of our history of manufacturing and doing things, with the best knowledge at the time, which weren't always the best environmental practices that we would do today. So we did look into that. So I just wanted to let you know and publicly let you know that we have followed up with that.
Let me ask you a quick question. With that being a Superfund site, I mean, I know there's lots of barrels of chemicals buried down there. Is that going to be cleaned up at any time?
I don't know that answer. It is not related to the Woodlawn project, so the Woodlawn project's not going to do it. The Superfund side, is my understanding, is the federal government comes in and cleans it up at some point.
Yeah.
So
I just wondered
I
if
don't
we
know
have
when
any
it's
timeline.
Yeah, there's all sorts of,
Yeah.
and like anyone who has owned the property at any time is responsible for
Yes.
like everything that's there now, and it's a mess,
Yeah.
literally.
Mhm.
Yes.
Well, I mean, there's residential areas around that. I know they've got concerns about that leaking.
That old Superfund thing's been there in existence a long time, two
Yeah.
sites, and it was some bad stuff with driveway, other, environmental.
Well, there was,
Issues, but, the thing about the folks, they just do their own thing, the 900-pound gorilla, they're in charge of that, they're not open to any kind of dialogue, or they, really it's not our, unless it's affecting our site or our regulatory process, it's a whole different
Yeah.
ballgame. But we went, we had experience 20 years ago going to Atlanta with EPA, and they just basically tell you this is the way it is, and we're in charge, and you're not. So, very difficult.
Yeah.
You get a lot of that lately.
Yeah.
That's good advice, Jennifer.
Yes. And the last thing I have is, on a positive note, I want to thank all the staff for all the hard work they've done the last several months on our events, and Moonlight on Main and the Christmas Village and the Christmas Parade, and the Public Works guys who have been dealing with Christmas since July. I mean, Christmas basically is
Tremendous job.
it's a 6-month process for us, and I know they're all sick and tired of Christmas, and so we've taken the Christmas spirit from them, but they've been working hard on it. I appreciate
We're very
Public Works
blessed.
guys here, but the
Very
police
blessed.
and the fire department helped us, with safety of all these events. We've had a ton
Yeah.
of people downtown in the last 2 to 3 months, and that doesn't just happen. So
This weekend,
there's a lot of people
Oh,
down
yeah.
there. The park looks fantastic, and so Phil and Jamie and the Main Street volunteers and board members and the public works staff, police and fire, and everybody else that just pitched in. It's a big effort, and it looks great. So I appreciate all that the staff has done to make it not only fantastic but safe, and to do it. We're sort of still kind of in COVID, but not really in COVID, and we don't really know what all the rules are, but we're doing it. We're trying to follow everything and invite a bunch of people downtown, but do it safely, and we're trying to maneuver all that. So I appreciate everything that y'all have done to make all that possible and to make it look easy.
Thank you, Adrian.
So that's all I've got, Mayor.
All right. Other business? Mark, we'll start with you, because Alex is new. So.
Oh, right. I guess that's fair. Well, welcome, Alex. Yeah, well, I would just echo a lot of what Adrian just said about the way the city looks. I thought last year you guys did a great job, and this year you managed to top that. So looking forward to next year. I'm expecting real snow at some point. So just like to throw that out there. I did have one question. I'm looking at the code enforcement update on the automated card feeder. I know we approved a demolition ordinance at our last meeting, which is kind of wondering, it looked like there's, I guess Mr. Merrow is the property owner.
Yes.
I was just kind of curious to know where that stood.
Lieutenant Pullen, could you?
Yes, sir, I have been meeting with Nancy and Gager.
Mhm.
I will meet with her.
Okay.
What's there to discuss? We passed the demolition ordinance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Notify them about the demolition. To notify them about the demolition schedule.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that was it.
Okay. Martha?
Mostly, I want to talk just a minute about historic preservation. My husband and I lived in Charleston, South Carolina for 3 years. When we moved up here in 1978, this town was not involved in historic preservation. Talk about a long-term project. It took me till 1994 to get Stone Manor so that we had the ownership of it and redo it. And we raised $50,000 for the Y with the community working with this and the house. And so tomorrow it does close, and I'm mentioning that mostly because the people who plan to buy it are going to maintain it as a residence which to me is so exciting because our highest and best use, the way we could have made the most money would have been to sell it to a developer and let them build townhouses. So I just want to make sure that everybody realizes that there are not just myself, but a number of us who have been working on historic preservation in Belmont. And so I'm very pleased that this is what's happening as opposed to what could.
That's great.
So just want to let
Thank
you
you,
know.
Martha. All right, I've got nothing. Jim?
Oh, well, welcome, Alex. You jump right in and fit right in with us. I thought that we had some good debate today because some of the issues we were faced with, there weren't very many palatable options. So I thought it was a good discussion by everyone today to try and wrestle with these issues. Everything looks good downtown. My significant other was commenting on that just the other night. I'm sorry I missed Saturday. I was being miserable in Charlotte for 3 hours Saturday night, but at least I was in Charlotte to be miserable, which is more than Clemson and NC State can say. The other thing, Richard touched on it. We haven't heard anything about the audit, I don't feel, in a couple months. And since we did things a certain way with the rec center, and I think one of our other, maybe it was paving or whatever, I was wondering where that stood, what's going on with that, when we have extricated ourselves from audit purgatory.
I will have Jared give you an update at the January meeting.
Okay,
All right, good.
that's all.
Purgatory is a good word.
Richard?
Oh, nothing, just to comment, it was a great parade, Christmas Village. Special note for leaf collection. They're doing a great job. That was a sore point for a lot of people for a long time. I watched the guys come down our road. We've got a lot of leaves on Dogwood Lane, and it is fun to watch that driver with that little control and that articulating arm get all those leaves. I mean, it's a lot different than the way it used to be. One guy in the truck, two guys out there with rakes, kind of funneling it toward the vacuum. So this looks like a lot cleaner process, a lot easier. I mean, I'd like the guy to let me drive it down our road and do it, because it looks like a little video game in there.
That sounds like an insurance issue, Deborah.
Now, hey, we are covered by the city insurance, so I think, Richard, so you might
Yeah. I don't know. It sounds like a frolic and a detour to me.
Of course, welcome, Alex. Congratulations. Mayor, congratulations. And I would like to note, say something about Ryan. Ryan served 8 years. I think Ryan had honorable service for 8 years. I think it could be said that Ryan and I, on occasion, agreed to disagree. We voiced our opinions and we clashed a little, but at the end of the day, I think we produced some good results. I think Ryan helped make me a better council person because of our debating. It caused me to look at things and think about my own thought process and how I look at things. I mean, as you know, I used to end up on the short end of a lot of 4-1 votes, and I know everyone on council is very intelligent. So reflectively, it caused me to look back at my own process and how I view things and their perspectives. I like to try to take everything and look at it 360. But I just note that I do appreciate Ryan's service, and his impact on me was positive.
Okay. Alex?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I'm very excited to work with you all. I'm excited to be here. I'd like to thank, everyone that came out to vote, despite who you voted for. I think we had a great turnout out there. There were a lot of enthusiastic people, which was exciting to see. It's kind of interesting going last because then you get to just echo everyone. But no, Main Street looks amazing. The parade was awesome. I think everyone has done such a great job with the staff, with city staff and the Main Street Board. And again, congratulations, Charlie. Congratulations, Richard. I'm excited to work with you all and excited to work with pretty much everyone on here. So
Pretty much.
Pretty much.
Other than Jim.
Other than Jim. No, I'm just kidding.
Acquired taste.
Before I make a motion to adjourn, I want to thank you guys for serving. Well, everybody on the council that serves knows what work goes into it right there. There's a lot of work involved in it. But congratulations to Alex, congratulations to Richard, and thank you very much. Do I have a motion to
Mayor,
adjourn?
before you adjourn, Deborah reminded me that we have our employee Christmas luncheon in this room on Friday at noon, and you all are invited.
Yes.
I think she reached out to you, but I want to make sure you remind you.
And I want to say one thing. I had a citizen say to me this week that we needed to have some guts to do particularly what that citizen wanted, and I really came out of my chamber because I thought this council has guts. We have done a lot of stuff. So I told that person that he was in the wrong pew. That is all I said. And I said it very personally. So this council has done a lot, so I want to
They've
make
done a
sure
lot.
we commend this group as well. But I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
The motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.